Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path. Thy word is very pure, therefore thy servant loveth it. Thy word have I hid in mine heart, that I might not sin against thee. This is my comfort in my affliction, for thy word hath quickened me. Let, I pray thee, thy merciful kindness be for my comfort, according to thy word unto thy servant. Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. Faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand.
Go to ubible.net today and let his word be a lamp unto your feet and a light unto your path.
For the time is at hand to hear thy word. The Proverbs, chapter 1. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity, to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels, to understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother, for they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. If they say, Come with us, let us lay wait for blood, let us lurk privily for the innocent, without cause, let us swallow them up alive as the grave, and whole as those that go down into the pit. We shall find all precious substance, we shall fill our houses with spoil. Cast in thy lot among us, let us all have one purse. My son, walk not thou in the way with them, refrain thy foot from their path, for their feet run to evil, and make haste to shed blood. Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird, and they lay wait for their own blood. They lurk privily for their own lives. So are the ways of every one that is greedy of gain, which taketh away the life of the owners thereof. Wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets. She crieth in the chief place of concourse, in the openings of the gates. In the city she uttereth her words, saying, How long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity? And the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. Because I have called, and ye refused, I have stretched out my hand, and no man regarded. But ye have set at naught all my counsel, and would none of my reproof. I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. When your fear cometh as desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish cometh upon you. Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. For that they hated knowledge, and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would none of my counsel, they despised all my reproof. Therefore shall they eat of the fruit of their own way, and be filled with their own devices. For the turning away of the simple shall slay them, and the prosperity of fools shall destroy them. But whoso hearkeneth unto me shall dwell safely, and shall be quiet from fear of evil. Chapter 2. My son, if thou wilt receive my words, and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom, and apply thine heart to understanding, yea, if thou criest after knowledge, and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver, and searchest for her as for hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord, and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord giveth wisdom. Out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. He layeth up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a buckler to them that walk uprightly. He keepeth the paths of judgment, and preserveth the way of his saints. Then shalt thou understand righteousness, and judgment, and equity, yea, every good path. When wisdom entereth into thine heart, and knowledge is pleasant unto thy soul, discretion shall preserve thee, understanding shall keep thee, to deliver thee from the way of the evil man, from the man that speaketh froward things, who leave the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice to do evil, and delight in the frowardness of the wicked, whose ways are crooked, and they froward in their paths. To deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth with her words, which forsaketh the guide of her youth, and forgetteth the covenant of her God. For her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead. None that go unto her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life. That thou mayest walk in the way of good men, and keep the paths of the righteous. For the upright shall dwell in the land, and the perfect shall remain in it. But the wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the transgressors shall be rooted out of it. Chapter 3. My son, forget not my Lord, but let thine heart keep my commandments. For length of days and long life and peace shall they add to thee. Let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck. Write them upon the table of thine heart. So shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord, and depart from evil. It shall be health to thy navel, and marrow to thy bones. Honor the Lord with thy substance, and with the first fruits of all thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth, even as a father the son in whom he delighteth. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things thou canst desire are not to be compared unto her. Length of days is in her right hand, and in her left hand riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is every one that retaineth her. The Lord by wisdom hath founded the earth, by understanding hath he established the heavens. By his knowledge the depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. My son, let not them depart from thine eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. So shall they be life unto thy soul, and grace to thy neck. Then shalt thou walk in thy way safely, and thy foot shall not stumble. When thou liest down, thou shalt not be afraid. Yea, thou shalt lie down, and thy sleep shall be sweet. Be not afraid of sudden fear, neither of the desolation of the wicked when it cometh. For the Lord shall be thy confidence, and shall keep thy foot from being taken. Withhold not good from them to whom it is due, when it is in the power of thine hand to do it. Say not unto thy neighbor, Go and come again, and tomorrow I will give, when thou hast it by thee. Devise not evil against thy neighbor, seeing he dwelleth securely by thee. Strive not with a man without cause, if he have done thee no harm. Envy thou not the oppressor, and choose none of his ways, for the froward is abomination to the Lord, but his secret is with the righteous. The curse of the Lord is in the house of the wicked, but he blesseth the habitation of the just. Surely he scorneth the scorners, but he giveth grace unto the lowly. The wise shall inherit glory, but shame shall be the promotion of fools. Chapter 4. Hear, ye children, the instruction of a father, and attend to no understanding. For I give you good doctrine. Forsake ye not my law. For I was my father's son, tender and only beloved in the sight of my mother. He taught me also, and said unto me, Let thine heart retain my words, keep my commandments, and live. Get wisdom, get understanding. Forget it not, neither decline from the words of my mouth. Forsake her not, and she shall preserve thee. Love her, and she shall keep thee. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And with all thy getting, get understanding. Exalt her, and she shall promote thee. She shall bring thee to honor when thou dost embrace her. She shall give to thine head an ornament of grace. A crown of glory shall she deliver to thee. Hear, O my son, and receive my sayings, and the years of thy life shall be many. I have taught thee in the way of wisdom. I have led thee in right paths. When thou goest, thy steps shall not be straitened, and when thou runnest, thou shalt not stumble. Take fast hold of instruction. Let her not go. Keep her, for she is thy life. Enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not in the way of evil men. Avoid it. Pass not by it. Turn from it, and pass away. For they sleep not, except they have done mischief, and their sleep is taken away, unless they cause some to fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness, and drink the wine of violence. But the path of the just is as the shining light that shineth more and more unto the perfect day. The way of the wicked is as darkness. They know not at what they stumble. My son, attend to my words. Incline thine ear unto my sayings. Let them not depart from thine eyes. Keep them in the midst of thine heart. For they are life unto those that find them, and health to all their flesh. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Put away from thee a froward mouth, and perverse lips put far from thee. Let thine eyes look right on, and let thine eyelids look straight before thee. Ponder the path of thy feet, and let all thy ways be established. Turn not to the right hand nor to the left. Remove thy foot from evil. Chapter 5. My son, attend unto my wisdom, and bow thine ear to my understanding, that thou mayest regard discretion, and that thy lips may keep knowledge. For the lips of a strange woman drop as an honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil. But her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps take hold on hell. Lest thou shouldest ponder the path of life, her ways are movable, that thou canst not know them. Hear me now, therefore, O ye children, and depart not from the words of my mouth. Remove thy way far from her, and come not nigh the door of her house, lest thou give thine honor unto others, and thy years unto the cruel. Lest strangers be filled with thy wealth, and thy labors be in the house of a stranger, and thou mourn at the last, when thy flesh and thy body are consumed, and say, How have I hated instruction, and my heart despised reproof, and have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined mine ear to them that instructed me. I was almost in all evil in the midst of the congregation and assembly. Drink waters out of thine own cistern, and running waters out of thine own well. Let thy fountains be dispersed abroad, and rivers of waters in the streets. Let them be only thine own, and not strangers with thee. Let thy fountain be blessed, and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. Let her be as the loving hind and pleasant roe. Let her breasts satisfy thee at all times, and be thou ravished always with her love. And why wilt thou, my son, be ravished with a strange woman, and embrace the bosom of a stranger? For the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he pondereth all his goings. His own iniquities shall take the wicked himself, and he shall be holden with the cords of his sins. He shall die without instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray. Chapter 6. My son, if thou be surety for thy friend, If thou hast stricken thy hand with a stranger, thou art snared with the words of thy mouth, thou art taken with the words of thy mouth. Do this now, my son, and deliver thyself when thou art come into the hand of thy friend. Go, humble thyself, and make sure thy friend. Give not sleep to thine eyes, nor slumber to thine eyelids. Deliver thyself as a roe from the hand of the hunter, and as a bird from the hand of the fowler. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise, which, having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travelleth, and thy want as an armed man. A naughty person, a wicked man, walketh with a froward mouth. He winketh with his eyes, he speaketh with his feet, he teacheth with his fingers. Frowardness is in his heart, he deviseth mischief continually, he soweth discord. Therefore shall his calamity come suddenly, suddenly shall he be broken without remedy. These 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him: a proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, an heart that deviseth wicked imaginations, feet that be swift in running to mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren. My son, keep thy father's commandment, and forsake not the law of thy mother. Bind them continually upon thine heart, and tie them about thy neck. When thou goest, it shall lead thee. When thou sleepest, it shall keep thee. And when thou awakest, it shall talk with thee. For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light, and reproofs of instruction are the way of life, to keep thee from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman. Lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids. For by means of a whorish woman a man is brought to a piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for the precious life. Can a man take fire in his bosom, and his clothes not be burned? Can one go upon hot coals, and his feet not be burned? So he that goeth in to his neighbor's wife, whosoever toucheth her, shall not be innocent. Men do not despise a thief if he steal to satisfy his soul when he is hungry. But if he be found, he shall restore 7-fold. He shall give all the substance of his house. But whoso committeth adultery with a woman lacketh understanding. He that doeth it destroyeth his own soul. A wound and dishonor shall he get, and his reproach shall not be wiped away. For jealousy is the rage of a man. Therefore he will not spare in the day of vengeance. He will not regard any ransom, neither will he rest content, though thou givest many gifts. Chapter 7. My son, keep my words, and lay up my commandments with thee. Keep my commandments, and live, and my law as the apple of thine eye. Bind them upon thy fingers, write them upon the table of thine heart. Say unto wisdom, thou art my sister, and call understanding thy kinswoman, that they may keep thee from the strange woman, from the stranger which flattereth with her words. For at the window of my house I looked through my casement, and beheld among the simple ones. I discerned among the youths a young man void of understanding, passing through the street near her corner, and he went the way to her house, in the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night. And behold, there met him a woman with the attire of an harlot, and subtle of heart. She is loud and stubborn, her feet abide not in her house. Now is she without, now in the streets, and lieth in wait at every corner. So she caught him, and kissed him, and with an impudent face said unto him, I have peace offerings with me. This day have I paid my vows. Therefore came I forth to meet thee, diligently to seek thy face, and I have found thee. I have decked my bed with coverings of tapestry, with carved works, with fine linen of Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, Let us take our fill of love until the morning. Let us solace ourselves with loves. For the goodman is not at home. He has gone a long journey. He hath taken a bag of money with him, and will come home at the day appointed. With her much fair speech she caused him to yield. With the flattering of her lips she forced him. He goeth after her straightway, as an ox goeth to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks, till a dart strike through his liver. As a bird hasteth to the snare, and knoweth not that it is for his life. Hearken unto me now, therefore, O ye children, and attend to the words of my mouth. Let not thine heart decline to her ways. Go not astray in her paths. For she hath cast down many wounded. Yea, many strong men have been slain by her. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death. Chapter 8. Doth not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? She standeth in the top of high places, by the way in the places of the paths. She crieth at the gates, at the entry of the city, at the coming in at the doors. Unto you, O men, I call, and my voice is to the sons of man. O ye simple, understand wisdom, and ye fools, be ye of an understanding heart. Hear, for I will speak of excellent things, and the opening of my lips shall be right things. For my mouth shall speak truth, and wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are in righteousness. There is nothing froward or perverse in them. They are all plain to him that understandeth, and right to them that find knowledge. Receive my instruction, and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and find out knowledge of witty inventions. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil. Pride, and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the froward mouth do I hate. Counsel is mine, and sound wisdom. I am understanding. I have strength. By me kings reign, and princes decree justice. By me princes rule, and nobles, even all the judges of the earth. I love them that love me, and those that seek me early shall find me. Riches and honor are with me, yea, durable riches and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, yea, than fine gold, and my revenue than choice silver. I lead in the way of righteousness in the midst of the paths of judgment, that I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, and I will fill their treasures. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. When there were no depths, I was brought forth, when there were no fountains abounding with water. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth, while as yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the depth, when he established the clouds above, when he strengthened the fountains of the deep, when he gave to the sea his decree that the water should not pass his commandment, when he appointed the foundations of the earth, then I was by him, as one brought up with him, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him, rejoicing in the habitable part of his earth, and my delights were with the sons of men. Now therefore hearken unto me, O ye children, for blessed are they that keep my ways. Hear instruction, and be wise, and refuse it not. Blessed is the man that heareth me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the posts of my doors. For whoso findeth me, findeth life, and shall obtain favor of the Lord. But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. Chapter 9. Wisdom hath builded her house. She hath hewn out her 7 pillars. She hath killed her beasts. She hath mingled her wine, she hath also furnished her table. She hath sent forth her maidens, she crieth upon the highest places of the city, Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. As for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, Come, eat of my bread, and drink of the wine which I have mingled. Forsake the foolish, and live, and go in the way of understanding. He that reproveth a scorner getteth to himself shame, and he that rebuketh a wicked man getteth himself a blot. Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. For by me thy days shall be multiplied, and the years of thy life shall be increased. If thou be wise, thou shalt be wise for thyself. But if thou scornest, thou alone shalt bear it. A foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knoweth nothing. For she sitteth at the door of her house, on a seat in the high places of the city, to call passengers who go right on their ways. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, Stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he knoweth not that the dead are there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell. Chapter 10. The Proverbs of Solomon. A wise son maketh a glad father, but a foolish son is the heaviness of his mother. Treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivereth from death. The Lord will not suffer the soul of the righteous to famish, but he casteth away the substance of the wicked. He becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich. He that gathereth in summer is a wise son, but he that sleepeth in harvest is a son that causeth shame. Blessings are upon the head of the just, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. The memory of the just is blessed, but the name of the wicked shall rot. The wise in heart will receive commandments, but a prating fool shall fall. He that walketh uprightly walketh surely, but he that perverteth his ways shall be known. He that winketh with the eye causeth sorrow, but a prating fool shall fall. The mouth of a righteous man is a well of life, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. Hatred stirreth up strifes, but love covereth all sins. In the lips of him that hath understanding wisdom is found, but a rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. Wise men lay up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. The rich man's wealth is his strong city. The destruction of the poor is their poverty. The labor of the righteous tendeth to life, the fruit of the wicked to sin. He is in the way of life that keepeth instruction, but he that refuseth reproof erreth. He that hideth hatred with lying lips, and he that uttereth a slander, is a fool. In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. The tongue of the just is as choice silver, the heart of the wicked is little worth. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for want of wisdom. The blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow with it. It is as sport to a fool to do mischief, but a man of understanding hath wisdom. The fear of the wicked, it shall come upon him, but the desire of the righteous shall be granted. As the whirlwind passeth, so is the wicked no more, but the righteous is an everlasting foundation. As vinegar to the teeth and as smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to them that send him. The fear of the Lord prolongeth days, but the years of the wicked shall be shortened. The hope of the righteous shall be gladness, but the expectation of the wicked shall perish. The way of the Lord is strength to the upright, but destruction shall be to the workers of iniquity. The righteous shall never be removed, but the wicked shall not inhabit the earth. The mouth of the just bringeth forth wisdom, but the froward tongue shall be cut out. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked speaketh frowardness. Chapter 11. A false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. When pride cometh, then cometh shame, but with the lowly is wisdom. The integrity of the upright shall guide them, but the perverseness of transgressors shall destroy them. Riches profit not in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivereth from death. The righteousness of the perfect shall direct his way, but the wicked shall fall by his own wickedness. The righteousness of the upright shall deliver him, but transgressors shall be taken in their own naughtiness. When a wicked man dieth, his expectation shall perish, and the hope of unjust men perisheth. The righteous is delivered out of trouble, and the wicked cometh in his stead. An hypocrite with his mouth destroyeth his neighbor, but through knowledge shall the just be delivered. When it goeth well with the righteous, the city rejoiceth, and when the wicked perish, there is shouting. By the blessing of the upright the city is exalted, but it is overthrown by the mouth of the wicked. He that is void of wisdom despiseth his neighbor, but a man of understanding holdeth his peace. A talebearer revealeth secrets, but he that is of a faithful spirit concealeth the matter. Where no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. He that is surety for a stranger shall smart for it, and he that hateth suretyship is sure. A gracious woman retaineth honor, and strong men retain riches. The merciful man doeth good to his own soul, but he that is cruel troubleth his own flesh. The wicked worketh a deceitful work, but to him that soweth righteousness shall be a sure reward. As righteousness tendeth to life, so he that pursueth evil pursueth it to his own death. They that are of a froward heart are abomination to the Lord, but such as are upright in their way are his delight. Though hand join in hand, the wicked shall not be unpunished, but the seed of the righteous shall be delivered. As a jewel of gold in a swine's snout, so is a fair woman which is without discretion. The desire of the righteous is only good, but the expectation of the wicked is wrath. There is that scattereth and yet increaseth, and there is that withholdeth more than is meet, but it tendeth to poverty. The liberal soul shall be made fat, and he that watereth shall be watered also himself. He that withholdeth corn, the people shall curse him, but blessing shall be upon the head of him that selleth it. He that diligently seeketh good procureth favor, but he that seeketh mischief, it shall come unto him. He that trusteth in his riches shall fall, but the righteous shall flourish as a branch. He that troubleth his own house shall inherit the wind, and the fool shall be servant to the wise of heart. The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and he that winneth souls is wise. Behold, the righteous shall be recompensed in the earth, much more the wicked and the sinner. Chapter 12. Whoso loveth instruction loveth knowledge, but he that hateth reproof is brutish. A good man obtaineth favor of the Lord, but a man of wicked devices will he condemn. A man shall not be established by wickedness, but the root of the righteous shall not be moved. A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, but she that maketh ashamed is as rottenness in his bones. The thoughts of the righteous are right, but the counsels of the wicked are deceit. The words of the wicked are to lie in wait for blood, but the mouth of the upright shall deliver them. The wicked are overthrown and are not, but the house of the righteous shall stand. A man shall be commended according to his wisdom, but he that is of a perverse heart shall be despised. He that is despised and hath a servant is better than he that honoureth himself and lacketh bread. A righteous man regardeth the life of his beast, but the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. He that tilleth his land shall be satisfied with bread, but he that followeth vain persons is void of understanding. The wicked desireth the net of evil men, but the root of the righteous yieldeth fruit. The wicked is snared by the transgression of his lips, but the just shall come out of trouble. A man shall be satisfied with good by the fruit of his mouth, and the recompense of a man's hands shall be rendered unto him. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he that hearkeneth unto counsel is wise. A fool's wrath is presently known, but a prudent man covereth shame. He that speaketh truth showeth forth righteousness, but a false witness deceit. There is that speaketh like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise is health. The lip of truth shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. Deceit is in the heart of them that imagine evil, but to the counselors of peace is joy. There shall no evil happen to the just, but the wicked shall be filled with mischief. Lying lips are abomination to the Lord, but they that deal truly are his delight. A prudent man concealeth knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaimeth foolishness. The hand of the diligent shall bear rule, but the slothful shall be under tribute. Heaviness in the heart of man maketh it stoop, but a good word maketh it glad. The righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduceth them. The slothful man roasteth not that which he took in hunting, but the substance of a diligent man is precious. In the way of righteousness is life, and in the pathway thereof there is no death. Chapter 13. A wise son heareth his father's instruction, but a scorner heareth not rebuke. A man shall eat good by the fruit of his mouth, but the soul of the transgressors shall eat violence. He that keepeth his mouth keepeth his life, but he that openeth wide his lips shall have destruction. The soul of the sluggard desireth, and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat. A righteous man hateth lying, but a wicked man is loathsome, and cometh to shame. Righteousness keepeth him that is upright in the way, but wickedness overthroweth the sinner. There is that maketh himself rich, yet hath nothing. There is that maketh himself poor, yet hath great riches. The ransom of a man's life are his riches, but the poor heareth not rebuke. The light of the righteous rejoiceth, but the lamp of the wicked shall be put out. Only by pride cometh contention, but with the well-advised is wisdom. Wealth gotten by vanity shall be diminished, but he that gathereth by labor shall increase. Hope deferred maketh the heart sick, but when the desire cometh, it is a tree of life. Whoso despiseth the word shall be destroyed, but he that feareth the commandment shall be rewarded. The law of the wise is a fountain of life, to depart from the snares of death. Good understanding giveth favor, but the way of transgressors is hard. Every prudent man dealeth with knowledge, but a fool layeth open his folly. A wicked messenger falleth into mischief, but a faithful ambassador is health. Poverty and shame shall be to him that refuseth instruction, but he that regardeth reproof shall be honored. The desire accomplished is sweet to the soul, but it is abomination to fools to depart from evil. He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. Evil pursueth sinners, but to the righteous good shall be repaid. A good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. Much food is in the tillage of the poor, but there is that is destroyed for want of judgment. He that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. The righteous eateth to the satisfying of his soul, but the belly of the wicked shall want. Chapter 14. Every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands. He that walketh in his uprightness feareth the Lord, but he that is perverse in his ways despiseth him. In the mouth of the foolish is a rod of pride, but the lips of the wise shall preserve them. Where no oxen are, the crib is clean, but much increase is by the strength of the ox. A faithful witness will not lie, but a false witness will utter lies. A scorner seeketh wisdom, and findeth it not, but knowledge is easy unto him that understandeth. Go from the presence of a foolish man, when thou perceivest not in him the lips of knowledge. The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of fools is deceit. Fools make a mock at sin, but among the righteous there is favor. The heart knoweth his own bitterness, and a stranger doth not intermeddle with his joy. The house of the wicked shall be overthrown, but the tabernacle of the upright shall flourish. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Even in laughter the heart is sorrowful, and the end of that mirth is heaviness. The backslider in heart shall be filled with his own ways, and a good man shall be satisfied from himself. The simple believeth every word, but the prudent man looketh well to his going. A wise man feareth and departeth from evil, but the fool rageth and is confident. He that is soon angry dealeth foolishly, and a man of wicked devices is hated. The simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge. The evil bow before the good, and the wicked at the gates of the righteous. The poor is hated even of his own neighbor, but the rich hath many friends. He that despiseth his neighbor sinneth, but he that hath mercy on the poor, happy is he. Do they not err that devise evil? But mercy and truth shall be to them that devise good. In all labor there is profit, but the talk of the lips tendeth only to penury. The crown of the wise is their riches, but the foolishness of fools is folly. A true witness delivereth souls, but a deceitful witness speaketh lies. In the fear of the Lord is strong confidence, and his children shall have a place of refuge. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, to depart from the snares of death. In the multitude of people is the king's honor, but in the want of people is the destruction of the prince. He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding, but he that is hasty of spirit exalteth folly. A sound heart is the life of the flesh, but envy the rottenness of the bones. He that oppresseth the poor reproacheth his Maker, but he that honoreth him hath mercy on the poor. The wicked is driven away in his wickedness, but the righteous hath hope in his death. Wisdom resteth in the heart of him that hath understanding, but that which is in the midst of fools is made known. Righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. The king's favor is toward a wise servant, but his wrath is against him that causeth shame. Chapter 15. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit. A fool despiseth his father's instruction, but he that regardeth reproof is prudent. In the house of the righteous is much treasure, but in the revenues of the wicked is trouble. The lips of the wise disperse knowledge, but the heart of the foolish doeth not so. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but the prayer of the upright is his delight. The way of the wicked is an abomination unto the Lord, but he loveth him that followeth after righteousness. Correction is grievous unto him that forsaketh the way, and he that hateth reproof shall die. Hell and destruction are before the Lord. How much more, then, the hearts of the children of men? A scorner loveth not one that reproveth him, neither will he go unto the wise. A merry heart maketh a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of the heart the spirit is broken. The heart of him that hath understanding seeketh knowledge, but the mouth of fools feedeth on foolishness. All the days of the afflicted are evil, but he that is of a merry heart hath a continual feast. Better is little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble therewith. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a stalled ox and hatred therewith. A wrathful man stirreth up strife, but he that is slow to anger appeaseth strife. The way of the slothful man is as an hedge of thorns, but the way of the righteous is made plain. A wise son maketh a glad father, but a foolish man despiseth his mother. Folly is joy to him that is destitute of wisdom, but a man of understanding walketh uprightly. Without counsel, purposes are disappointed, but in the multitude of counselors they are established. A man hath joy by the answer of his mouth, and a word spoken in due season, how good is it? The way of life is above to the wise, that he may depart from hell beneath. The Lord will destroy the house of the proud, but he will establish the border of the widow. The thoughts of the wicked are an abomination to the Lord, but the words of the pure are pleasant words. He that is greedy of gain troubleth his own house, but he that hateth gifts shall live. The heart of the righteous studieth to answer, but the mouth of the wicked poureth out evil things. The Lord is far from the wicked, but he heareth the prayer of the righteous. The light of the eyes rejoiceth the heart, and a good report maketh the bones fat. The ear that heareth the reproof of life abideth among the wise. He that refuseth instruction despiseth his own soul, but he that heareth reproof getteth understanding. The fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility. Chapter 16. The preparations of the heart in man and the answer of the tongue is from the Lord. All the ways of a man are clean in his own eyes, but the Lord weigheth the spirits. Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established. The Lord hath made all things for himself, yea, even the wicked for the day of evil. Every one that is proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Though hands join in hand, he shall not be unpunished. By mercy and truth iniquity is purged, and by the fear of the Lord men depart from evil. When a man's ways please the Lord, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him. Better is a little with righteousness than great revenues without right. A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps. A divine sentence is in the lips of the king, his mouth transgresseth not in judgment. A just weight and balance are the Lord's. All the weights of the bag are his work. It is an abomination to kings to commit wickedness, for the throne is established by righteousness. Righteous lips are the delight of kings, and they love him that speaketh right. The wrath of a king is as messengers of death, but a wise man will pacify. In the light of the king's countenance is life, and his favor is as a cloud of the latter rain. How much better is it to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding rather to be chosen than silver? The highway of the upright is to depart from evil. He that keepeth his way preserveth his soul. Pride goeth before destruction, and an haughty spirit before a fall. Better it is to be of an humble spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud. He that handleth a matter wisely shall find good, and whoso trusteth in the Lord, happy is he. The wise in heart shall be called prudent, and the sweetness of the lips increaseth learning. Understanding is a wellspring of life unto him that hath it, but the instruction of fools is folly. The heart of the wise teacheth his mouth, and addeth learning to his lips. Pleasant words are as an honeycomb, sweet to the soul, and health to the bones. There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. He that laboureth, laboureth for himself, for his mouth craveth it of him. An ungodly man diggeth up evil, and in his lips there is as a burning fire. A froward man soweth strife, and a whisperer separateth chief friends. A violent man enticeth his neighbor, and leadeth him into the way that is not good. He shutteth his eyes to devise froward things. Moving his lips, he bringeth evil to pass. The hoary head is a crown of glory, if it be found in the way of righteousness. He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city. The lot is cast into the lap, but the whole disposing thereof is of the Lord. Chapter 17. Better is a dry morsel and quietness therewith than an house full of sacrifices with strife. A wise servant shall have rule over a son that causeth shame, and shall have part of the inheritance among the brethren. The finding pot is for silver, and the furnace for gold, but the Lord trieth the hearts. A wicked doer giveth heed to false lips, and a liar giveth ear to a naughty tongue. Whoso mocketh the poor reproacheth his Maker, and he that is glad at calamities shall not be unpunished. Children's children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children are their fathers. Excellent speech becometh not a fool, much less do lying lips a prince. A gift is as a precious stone in the eyes of him that hath it. Whithersoever it turneth, it prospereth. He that covereth a transgression seeketh love, but he that repeateth a matter separateth very friends. A reproof entereth more into a wise man than 100 stripes into a fool. An evil man seeketh only rebellion, therefore a cruel messenger shall be sent against him. Let a bear robbed of her whelps meet a man, rather than a fool in his folly. Whoso rewardeth evil for good, evil shall not depart from his house. The beginning of strife is as when one letteth out water, therefore leave off contention before it be meddled with. He that justifieth the wicked, and he that condemneth the just, even they both are abomination to the Lord. Wherefore is there a price in the hand of a fool to get wisdom, seeing he hath no heart to it? A friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. A man void of understanding striketh hands, and becometh surety in the presence of his friend. He loveth transgression that loveth strife, and he that exalteth his gate seeketh destruction. He that hath a froward heart findeth no good, and he that hath a perverse tongue falleth into mischief. He that begetteth a fool doeth it to his sorrow, and the father of a fool hath no joy. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. A wicked man taketh a gift out of the bosom to pervert the ways of judgment. Wisdom is before him that hath understanding, but the eyes of a fool are in the ends of the earth. A foolish son is a grief to his father, and bitterness to her that bare him. Also to punish the just is not good, nor to strike princes for equity. He that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. Even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, is counted wise, and he that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. Chapter 18. Through desire, a man, having separated himself, seeketh and intermeddleth with all wisdom. A fool hath no delight in understanding, but that his heart may discover itself. When the wicked cometh, then cometh also contempt, and with ignominy reproach. The words of a man's mouth are as deep waters, and the wellspring of wisdom as a flowing brook. It is not good to accept the person of the wicked, to overthrow the righteous in judgment. A fool's lips enter into contention, and his mouth calleth for strokes. A fool's mouth is his destruction, and his lips are the snare of his soul. The words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. He also that is slothful in his work is brother to him that is a great waster. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe. The rich man's wealth is his strong city, and as an high wall in his own conceit. Before destruction, the heart of man is haughty, and before honor is humility. He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is folly and shame unto him. The spirit of a man will sustain his infirmity, but a wounded spirit who can bear? The heart of the prudent getteth knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeketh knowledge. A man's gift maketh room for him, and bringeth him before great men. He that is first in his own cause seemeth just, but his neighbor cometh and searcheth him. The lot causeth contentions to cease, and parteth between the mighty. A brother offended is harder to be won than a strong city, and their contentions are like the bars of a castle. A man's belly shall be satisfied with the fruit of his mouth, and with the increase of his lips shall he be filled. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. Whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing, and obtaineth favor of the Lord. The poor useth entreaties, but the rich answereth roughly. A man that hath friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. Chapter 19. Better is the poor that walketh in his integrity than he that is perverse in his lips and is a fool. Also, that the soul be without knowledge, it is not good, and he that hasteth with his feet sinneth. The foolishness of man perverteth his way, and his heart fretteth against the Lord. Wealth maketh many friends, but the poor is separated from his neighbor. A false witness shall not be unpunished, and he that speaketh lies shall not escape. Many will entreat the favor of the prince, and every man is a friend to him that giveth gifts. All the brethren of the poor do hate him. How much more do his friends go far from him? He pursueth them with words, yet they are wanting to him. He that getteth wisdom loveth his own soul. He that keepeth understanding shall find good. A false witness shall not be unpunished, and he that speaketh lies shall perish. Delight is not seemly for a fool, much less for a servant to have rule over princes. The discretion of a man deferreth his anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression. The king's wrath is as the roaring of a lion, but his favor is as dew upon the grass. A foolish son is the calamity of his father, and the contentions of a wife are a continual dropping. House and riches are the inheritance of fathers, and the prudent wife is from the Lord. Slothfulness casteth into a deep sleep, and an idle soul shall suffer hunger. He that keepeth the commandment keepeth his own soul, but he that despiseth his ways shall die. He that hath pity upon the poor lendeth unto the Lord, and that which he hath given will he pay him again. Chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crying. A man of great wrath shall suffer punishment, for if thou deliver him, yet thou must do it again. Hear counsel, and receive instruction, that thou mayest be wise in thy latter end. There are many devices in a man's heart, nevertheless the counsel of the Lord, that shall stand. The desire of a man is his kindness, and a poor man is better than a liar. The fear of the Lord tendeth to life, and he that hath it shall abide satisfied. He shall not be visited with evil. A slothful man hideth his hand in his bosom, and will not so much as bring it to his mouth again. Smite a scorner, and the simple will beware, and reprove one that hath understanding, and he will understand knowledge. He that wasteth his father, and chaseth away his mother, is a son that causeth shame, and bringeth reproach. Cease, my son, to hear the instruction that causeth to err from the words of knowledge. An ungodly witness scorneth judgment, and the mouth of the wicked devoureth iniquity. Judgments are prepared for scorners, and stripes for the backs of fools. Chapter 20. Wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. The fear of a king is as the roaring of a lion. Whoso provoketh him to anger sinneth against his own soul. It is an honor for a man to cease from strife, but every fool will be meddling. The sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold, therefore shall he beg in harvest and have nothing. Counsel in the heart of man is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. Most men will proclaim every one his own goodness, but a faithful man who can find? The just man walketh in his integrity, his children are blessed after him. A king that sitteth in the throne of judgment scattereth away all evil with his eyes. Who can say, I have made my heart clean, I am pure from my sin? Divers weights and divers measures, both of them are alike abomination to the Lord. Even a child is known by his doings, whether his work be pure and whether it be right. The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord hath made, even both of them. Love not sleep, lest thou come to poverty. Open thine eyes, and thou shalt be satisfied with bread. It is naught, saith the buyer. But when he is gone his way, then he boasteth. There is gold and a multitude of rubies, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel. Take his garment that is surety for a stranger, and take a pledge of him for a strange woman. Bread of deceit is sweet to a man, but afterwards his mouth shall be filled with gravel. Every purpose is established by counsel, and with good advice make war. He that goeth about as a talebearer revealeth secrets. Therefore meddle not with him that flattereth with his lips. Whoso curseth his father or his mother, his lamp shall be put out in obscure darkness. An inheritance may be gotten hastily at the beginning, but the end thereof shall not be blessed. Say not thou, I will recompense evil, but wait on the Lord, and he shall save thee. Divers weights are an abomination unto the Lord, and a false balance is not good. Man's goings are of the Lord. How can a man then understand his own way? It is a snare to the man who devoureth that which is holy, and after vows to make inquiry. A wise king scattereth the wicked, and bringeth the wheel over them. The spirit of man is the candle of the Lord, searching all the inward parts of the belly. Mercy and truth preserve the king, and his throne is upholden by mercy. The glory of young men is their strength, and the beauty of old men is the gray head. The blueness of a wound cleanseth away evil, so do stripes the inward parts of the belly. Chapter 21. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the rivers of water. He turneth it whithersoever he will. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord pondereth the hearts. To do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. An high look and a proud heart, and the plowing of the wicked is sin. The thoughts of the diligent tend only to plenteousness, but of every one that is hasty only to want. The getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a vanity tossed to and fro of them that seek death. The robbery of the wicked shall destroy them, because they refuse to do judgment. The way of man is froward and strange, but as for the pure, his work is right. It is better to dwell in a corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. The soul of the wicked desireth evil. His neighbor findeth no favor in his eyes. When the scorner is punished, the simple is made wise, and when the wise is instructed, he receiveth knowledge. The righteous man wisely considereth the house of the wicked, but God overthroweth the wicked for their wickedness. Whoso stoppeth his ears at the cry of the poor, he also shall cry himself, but shall not be heard. A gift in secret pacifieth anger, and a reward in the bosom strong wrath. It is joy to the just to do judgment, but destruction shall be to the workers of iniquity. The man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. He that loveth pleasure shall be a poor man. He that loveth wine and oil shall not be rich. The wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous, and the transgressor for the upright. It is better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and an angry woman. There is treasure to be desired, and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man spendeth it up. He that followeth after righteousness and mercy findeth life, righteousness, and honor. A wise man scaleth the city of the mighty, and casteth down the strength of the confidence thereof. Whoso keepeth his mouth and his tongue keepeth his soul from troubles. Proud and haughty scorner is his name, who dealeth in proud wrath. The desire of the slothful killeth him, for his hands refuse to labor. He coveteth greedily all the day long, but the righteous giveth and spareth not. The sacrifice of the wicked is abomination, how much more when he bringeth it with a wicked mind. A false witness shall perish, but the man that heareth speaketh constantly. A wicked man hardeneth his face, but as for the upright, he directeth his way. There is no wisdom, nor understanding, nor counsel against the Lord. The horse is prepared against the day of battle, but safety is of the Lord. Chapter 22. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold. The rich and poor meet together. The Lord is the maker of them all. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. Thorns and snares are in the way of the froward. He that doth keep his soul shall be far from them. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. He that soweth iniquity shall reap vanity, and the rod of his anger shall fail. He that hath a bountiful eye shall be blessed, for he giveth of his bread to the poor. Cast out the scorner, and contention shall go out. Yea, strife and reproach shall cease. He that loveth pureness of heart, for the grace of his lips the king shall be his friend. The eyes of the Lord preserve knowledge, and he overthroweth the words of the transgressor. The slothful man saith, There is a lion without, I shall be slain in the streets. The mouth of strange women is a deep pit. He that is abhorred of the Lord shall fall therein. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. He that oppresseth the poor to increase his riches, and he that giveth to the rich shall surely come to want. Bow down thine ear, and hear the words of the wise, and apply thine heart unto my knowledge. For it is a pleasant thing if thou keep them within thee. They shall withal be fitted in thy lips. That thy trust may be in the Lord, I have made known to thee this day, even to thee. Have not I written to thee excellent things in counsels and knowledge, that I might make thee know the certainty of the words of truth, that thou mightest answer the words of truth to them that send unto thee? Rob not the poor, because he is poor, neither oppress the afflicted in the gate. For the Lord will plead their cause, and spoil the soul of those that spoil them. Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways, and get a snare to thy soul. Be not thou one of them that strike hands, or of them that are sureties for debts. If thou hast nothing to pay, why should he take away thy bed from under thee? Remove not the ancient landmark which thy fathers have set. Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men. Chapter 23. When thou sittest to eat with a ruler, consider diligently what is before thee, and put a knife to thy throat if thou be a man given to appetite. Be not desirous of his dainties, for they are deceitful meat. Labor not to be rich, cease from thine own wisdom. Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings, they fly away as an eagle toward heaven. Eat thou not the bread of him that hath an evil eye, neither desire thou his dainty meats, for as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he to thee, but his heart is not with thee. The morsel which thou hast eaten shalt thou vomit up, and lose thy sweet words. Speak not in the ears of a fool, for he will despise the wisdom of thy words. Remove not the old landmark, and enter not into the fields of the fatherless, for their Redeemer is mighty, he shall plead their cause with thee. Apply thine heart unto instruction, and thine ears to the words of knowledge. Withhold not correction from the child, for if thou beatest him with the rod, he shall not die. Thou shalt beat him with the rod, and shalt deliver his soul from hell. My son, if thine heart be wise, my heart shall rejoice, even mine. Yea, my reins shall rejoice when thy lips speak right things. Let not thine heart envy sinners, but be thou in the fear of the Lord all the day long. For surely there is an end, and thine expectation shall not be cut off. Hear thou, my son, and be wise, and guide thine heart in the way. Be not among wine-bibbers, among riotous eaters of flesh, for the drunkard and the glutton shall come to poverty, and drowsiness shall clothe a man with rags. Hearken unto thy father that begat thee, and despise not thy mother when she is old. Buy the truth, and sell it not, also wisdom and instruction and understanding. The father of the righteous shall greatly rejoice, and he that begetteth a wise child shall have joy of him. Thy father and thy mother shall be glad, and she that bare thee shall rejoice. My son, give me thine heart, and let thine eyes observe my ways. For a whore is a deep ditch, and a strange woman is a narrow pit. She also lieth in wait as for a prey, and increaseth the transgressors among men. Who hath woe? Who hath sorrow? Who hath contentions? Who hath babbling? Who hath wounds without cause? Who hath redness of eyes? They that tarry long at the wine, they that go to seek mixed wine. Look not thou upon the wine when it is red, when it giveth his color in the cup, when it moveth itself aright. At the last it biteth like a serpent, and stingeth like an adder. Thine eyes shall behold strange women, and thine heart shall utter perverse things. Yea, thou shalt be as he that lieth down in the midst of the sea, or as he that lieth upon the top of a mast. They have stricken me, shalt thou say, and I was not sick. They have beaten me, and I felt it not. When shall I awake? I will seek it yet again. Chapter 24. Be not thou envious against evil men, neither desire to be with them, for their heart studieth destruction, and their lips talk of mischief. Through wisdom is an house builded, and by understanding it is established. And by knowledge shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. A wise man is strong. Yea, a man of knowledge increaseth strength. For by wise counsel thou shalt make thy war, and in multitude of counselors there is safety. Wisdom is too high for a fool. He openeth not his mouth in the gate. He that deviseth to do evil shall be called a mischievous person. The thought of foolishness is sin, and the scorner is an abomination to men. If thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. If thou forbear to deliver them that are drawn unto death, and those that are ready to be slain, if thou sayest, Behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? And he that keepeth thy soul, doth not he know it? And shall not he render to every man according to his works? My son, eat thou honey, because it is good, and the honeycomb, which is sweet to thy taste. So shall the knowledge of wisdom be unto thy soul. When thou hast found it, then there shall be a reward, and thy expectation shall not be cut off. Lay not wait, O wicked man, against the dwelling of the righteous. Spoil not his resting place. For a just man falleth 7 times, and riseth up again. But the wicked shall fall into mischief. Rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth, lest the Lord see it, and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. Fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked, for there shall be no reward to the evil man. The candle of the wicked shall be put out. My son, fear thou the Lord and the king, and meddle not with them that are given to change. For their calamity shall rise suddenly, and who knoweth the ruin of them both? These things also belong to the wise. It is not good to have respect of persons in judgment. He that saith unto the wicked, Thou art righteous, him shall the people curse, nations shall abhor him. But to them that rebuke him shall be delight, and a good blessing shall come upon them. Every man shall kiss his lips that giveth a right answer. Prepare thy work without, and make it fit for thyself in the field, and afterwards build thine house. Be not a witness against thy neighbor without cause, and deceive not with thy lips. Say not, I will do so to him as he hath done to me, I will render to the man according to his work. I went by the field of the slothful, and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. And lo, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. Then I saw and considered it well. I looked upon it and received instruction. Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travelleth, and thy want as an armed man. Chapter 25. These are also Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah king of Judah copied out. It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter. The heaven for height, and the earth for depth, and the heart of kings is unsearchable. Take away the dross from the silver, and there shall come forth a vessel for the finer. Take away the wicked from before the king, and his throne shall be established in righteousness. Put not forth thyself in the presence of the king, and stand not in the place of great men. For better it is that it be said unto thee, Come up hither, than that thou shouldest be put lower in the presence of the prince whom thine eyes have seen. Go not forth hastily to strive, lest thou know not what to do in the end thereof, when thy neighbor hath put thee to shame. Debate thy cause with thy neighbor himself, and discover not a secret to another, lest he that heareth it put thee to shame, and thine infamy turn not away. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. As an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold, so is a wise reprover upon an obedient ear. As the cold of snow in the time of harvest, so is a faithful messenger to them that send him, for he refresheth the soul of his masters. Whoso boasteth himself of a false gift is like clouds and wind without rain. By long forbearing is a prince persuaded, and a soft tongue breaketh the bone. Hast thou found honey? Eat so much as is sufficient for thee, lest thou be filled therewith and vomit it. Withdraw thy foot from thy neighbor's house, lest he be weary of thee, and so hate thee. A man that beareth false witness against his neighbor is a maul, and a sword, and a sharp arrow. Confidence in an unfaithful man in time of trouble is like a broken tooth, and a foot out of joint. As he that taketh away a garment in cold weather, and as vinegar upon nitre, so is he that singeth songs to an heavy heart. If thine enemy be hungry, give him bread to eat, and if he be thirsty, give him water to drink. For thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head, and the Lord shall reward thee. The north wind driveth away rain, so doth an angry countenance a backbiting tongue. It is better to dwell in the corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman and in a wide house. As cold waters to a thirsty soul, so is good news from a far country. A righteous man falling down before the wicked is as a troubled fountain and a corrupt spring. It is not good to eat much honey. So for men to search their own glory is not glory. He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. Chapter 26. As snow in summer and as rain in harvest, so honor is not seemly for a fool. As the bird by wandering and the swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the ass, and a rod for the fool's back. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be like unto him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit. He that sendeth a message by the hand of a fool cutteth off the feet and drinketh damage. The legs of the lame are not equal, so is a parable in the mouth of fools. As he that bindeth a stone in a sling, so is he that giveth honor to a fool. As a thorn goeth up into the hand of a drunkard, so is a parable in the mouth of fools. The great God that formed all things both rewardeth the fool and rewardeth transgressors. As a dog returneth to his vomit, so a fool returneth to his folly. Seest thou a man wise in his own conceit? There is more hope of a fool than of him. The slothful man saith, There is a lion in the way, a lion is in the streets. As the door turneth upon his hinges, so doth the slothful upon his bed. The slothful hideth his hand in his bosom, it grieveth him to bring it again to his mouth. The sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than 7 men that can render a reason. He that passeth by and meddleth with strife belonging not to him is like one that taketh a dog by the ears. As a mad man who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man that deceiveth his neighbor and saith, Am not I in sport? Where no wood is, there the fire goeth out. So where there is no talebearer, the strife ceaseth. As coals are to burning coals, and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. The words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. Burning lips and a wicked heart are like a potsherd covered with silver dross. He that hateth dissembleth with his lips, and layeth up deceit within him. When he speaketh fair, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Whose hatred is covered by deceit, his wickedness shall be showed before the whole congregation. Whoso diggeth a pit shall fall therein, and he that rolleth a stone, it will return upon him. A lying tongue hateth those that are afflicted by it, and a flattering mouth worketh ruin. The Proverbs, chapter 27. Boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. Let another man praise thee, and not thine own mouth, a stranger, and not thine own lips. A stone is heavy, and the sand weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than them both. Wrath is cruel, and anger is outrageous, but who is able to stand before envy? Open rebuke is better than secret love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. The full soul loatheth in honeycomb, but to the hungry soul every bitter thing is sweet. As a bird that wandereth from her nest, so is a man that wandereth from his place. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart, so doth the sweetness of a man's friend by hearty counsel. Thine own friend and thy father's friend forsake not, neither go into thy brother's house in the day of thy calamity, for better is a neighbor that is near than a brother far off. My son, be wise and make my heart glad, that I may answer him that reproacheth me. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. Take his garment that is surety for a stranger, and take a pledge of him for a strange woman. He that blesseth his friend with a loud voice rising early in the morning, it shall be counted a curse to him. A continual dropping in a very rainy day and a contentious woman are alike. Whosoever hideth her hideth the wind and the ointment of his right hand, which bewrayeth itself. Iron sharpeneth iron. so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. Whoso keepeth the fig tree shall eat the fruit thereof, so he that waiteth on his master shall be honored. As in water face answereth to face, so the heart of man to man. Hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. As the finding pot for silver and the furnace for gold, so is a man to his praise. Though thou shouldest bray a fool in a mortar among wheat with a pestle, yet will not his foolishness depart from him. Be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herds, for riches are not forever, and doth the crown endure to every generation. The hay appeareth, and the tender grass showeth itself, and herbs of the mountains are gathered. The lambs are for thy clothing, and the goats are the price of the field. Thou shalt have goat's milk enough for thy food, for the food of thy household, and for the maintenance for thy maidens. Chapter 28. The wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion. For the transgression of a land many are the princes thereof, but by a man of understanding and knowledge the state thereof shall be prolonged. A poor man that oppresseth the poor is like a sweeping rain which leaveth no food. They that forsake the law praise the wicked, but such as keep the law contend with them. Evil men understand not judgment, but they that seek the Lord understand all things. Better is the poor that walketh in his uprightness than he that is perverse in his ways, though he be rich. Whoso keepeth the law is a wise son, but he that is a companion of riotous men shameth his father. He that by usury and unjust gain increaseth his substance, he shall gather it for him that will pity the poor. He that turneth away his ear from hearing the law, even his prayer shall be abomination. Whoso causeth the righteous to go astray in an evil way, he shall fall himself into his own pit, but the upright shall have good things in possession. The rich man is wise in his own conceit, but the poor that hath understanding searcheth him out. When righteous men do rejoice, there is great glory, but when the wicked rise, a man is hidden. He that covereth his sins shall not prosper, but whoso confesseth and forsaketh them shall have mercy. Happy is the man that feareth alway, but he that hardeneth his heart shall fall into mischief. As a roaring lion and a raging bear, so is a wicked ruler over the poor people. The prince that wanteth understanding is also a great oppressor, but he that hateth covetousness shall prolong his days. A man that doeth violence to the blood of any person shall flee to the pit. Let no man stay him. Whoso walketh uprightly shall be saved, but he that is perverse in his ways shall fall at once. He that tilleth his land shall have plenty of bread, but he that followeth after vain persons shall have poverty enough. A faithful man shall abound with blessings, but he that maketh haste to be rich shall not be innocent. To have respect of persons is not good, for a piece of bread that man will transgress. He that hasteth to be rich hath an evil eye, and considereth not that poverty shall come upon him. He that rebuketh a man afterward shall find more favor than he that flattereth with the tongue. Whoso robbeth his father or his mother, and saith, It is no transgression, the same is the companion of a destroyer. He that is of a proud heart stirreth up strife, but he that putteth his trust in the Lord shall be made fat. He that trusteth in his own heart is a fool, but whoso walketh wisely, he shall be delivered. He that giveth unto the poor shall not lack, but he that hideth his eyes shall have many a curse. When the wicked rise, men hide themselves, but when they perish, the righteous increase. Chapter 29. He that being often reproved hardeneth his neck shall suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. Whoso loveth wisdom rejoiceth his father, but he that keepeth company with harlots spendeth his substance. The king by judgment establisheth the land, but he that receiveth gifts overthroweth it. A man that flattereth his neighbor spreadeth a net for his feet. In the transgression of an evil man there is a snare, but the righteous doth sing and rejoice. The righteous considereth the cause of the poor, but the wicked regardeth not to know it. Scornful men bring a city into a snare, but wise men turn away wrath. If a wise man contendeth with a foolish man, whether he rage or laugh, there is no rest. The bloodthirsty hate the upright, but the just seek his soul. A fool uttereth all his mind, but a wise man keepeth it in till afterwards. If a ruler hearken to lies, all his servants are wicked. The poor and the deceitful man meet together. The Lord lighteneth both their eyes. The king that faithfully judgeth the poor, his throne shall be established forever. The rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame. When the wicked are multiplied, transgression increaseth, but the righteous shall see their fall. Correct thy son, and he shall give thee rest. Yea, he shall give delight unto thy soul. Where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keepeth the law, happy is he. A servant will not be corrected by words, for though he understand, he will not answer. Seest thou a man that is hasty in his words? There is more hope of a fool than of him. He that delicately bringeth up his servant from a child shall have him become his son at the length. An angry man stirreth up strife, and a furious man aboundeth in transgression. A man's pride shall bring him low, but honor shall uphold the humble in spirit. Whoso is partner with a thief hateth his own soul. He heareth cursing, and bewrayeth it not. The fear of man bringeth a snare, but whoso putteth his trust in the Lord shall be safe. Many seek the ruler's favor, but every man's judgment cometh from the Lord. An unjust man is an abomination to the just, and he that is upright in the way is abomination to the wicked. Chapter 30. The words of Agur the son of Jakeh, even the prophecy. The man spake unto Ithiel, even unto Ithiel and Ucal. Surely I am more brutish than any man, and have not the understanding of a man. I neither learned wisdom, nor have the knowledge of the holy. Who hath ascended up into heaven, or descended? Who hath gathered the wind in his fists? Who hath bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established all the ends of the earth? What is his name, and what is his son's name? If thou canst tell. Every word of God is pure. He is a shield unto them that put their trust in him. Add thou not unto his words, lest he reprove thee, and thou be found a liar. 2 things have I required of thee. Deny me them not before I die. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me, lest I be full and deny thee and say, Who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my God in vain. Accuse not a servant unto his master, lest he curse thee, and thou be found guilty. There is a generation that curseth their father, and doth not bless their mother. There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, and yet is not washed from their filthiness. There is a generation, oh, how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. There is a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaw teeth as knives, to devour the poor from off the earth, and the needy from among men. The horse leech hath 2 daughters, crying, Give, give. There are 3 things that are never satisfied, yea, 4 things say not it is enough. The grave, and the barren womb, the earth that is not filled with water, and the fire that saith not it is enough. The eye that mocketh at his father, and despiseth to obey his mother, the ravens of the valley shall pick it out, and the young eagle shall eat it. There be 3 things which are too wonderful for me, yea, 4 which I know not. The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid. Such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eateth, and wipeth her mouth, and saith, I have done no wickedness. For 3 things the earth is disquieted, and for 4 which it cannot bear. For a servant when he reigneth, and a fool when he is filled with meat, for an odious woman when she is married, and an handmaid that is heir to her mistress. There be 4 things which are little upon the earth, but they are exceeding wise. The ants are a people not strong, yet they prepare their meat in the summer. The conies are but a feeble folk, yet make they their houses in the rocks. The locusts have no king, yet go they forth all of them by bands. The spider taketh hold with her hands, and is in kings' palaces. There be 3 things which go well, yea, 4 are comely in going. A lion, which is strongest among beasts, and turneth not away for any. A greyhound, an he-goat also, and a king against whom there is no rising up. If thou hast done foolishly in lifting up thyself, or if thou hast thought evil, lay thine hand upon thy mouth. Surely the churning of milk bringeth forth butter, and the wringing of the nose bringeth forth blood. So the forcing of wrath bringeth forth strife. Chapter 31. The words of King Lemuel, the prophecy that his mother taught him. What, my son, and what the son of my womb, and what the son of my vows? Give not thy strength unto women, nor thy ways to that which destroyeth kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes strong drink, lest they drink and forget the law, and pervert the judgment of any of the afflicted. Give strong drink unto him that is ready to perish, and wine unto those that be of heavy hearts. Let him drink and forget his poverty, and remember his misery no more. Open thy mouth for the dumb, in the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction. Open thy mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeketh wool and flax, and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant's ships. She bringeth her food from afar. She riseth also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens. She considereth the field, and buyeth it. With the fruit of her hands she planteth a vineyard. She girdeth her loins with strength, and strengtheneth her arms. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth not out by night. She layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor, yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She maketh herself coverings of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. She maketh fine linen, and selleth it, and delivereth girdles unto the merchant. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. Her children arise up, and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praiseth her. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain. But a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. The end of the Proverbs.
Are you one of those people who can't quite remember were the 20 kings mentioned in 2 Chronicles, kings of Israel or Judah? Or maybe you've heard about these kings but never understood why there were two kingdoms in the first place. Yes, there were two kingdoms, Israel and Judah. And if that sounds confusing, don't worry. We're here to break it all down for you. Because trust me, 2 Chronicles isn't just a long list of rulers and wars. It's the story of a nation divided, a kingdom fighting for survival, and leaders who either brought revival or sealed their people's doom. Think about it. What happens when a once great nation splits in half? What happens when people turn their backs on their foundation, their faith, their history? What happens when leaders choose power over righteousness, politics over truth, and pride over humility? Sound familiar? It should. Because what happened in Judah mirrors what is happening in our world today. Nations are rising and falling. Leaders are standing at a crossroads between truth and deception. And just like in the days of 2 Chronicles, the people are left wondering, is there any hope left? That's why this book matters. It isn't just ancient history. It's a warning, a blueprint, and a powerful message for anyone paying attention. Because while some kings led Judah to spiritual revival and victory, others led their people into corruption, destruction, and exile. And here's the biggest question: are we repeating their mistakes? If you've ever wanted a simple, clear, and dramatic breakdown of 2 Chronicles, you're in the right place. We'll uncover the rise of righteous kings, the downfall of wicked rulers, the wars, the betrayals, the miracles, and the moments where everything changed forever. So stay with us, because by the time we're done, you won't just understand 2 Chronicles. You'll see how its lessons apply to us today in ways you never imagined. And if this video brings new insight, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Someone else needs this truth just as much as you do. And don't forget to check out our exclusive ebooks for deeper Bible studies. Now, before we dive into the incredible stories of these kings, let's start with an even bigger question. Who wrote 2 Chronicles and why? The weight of an entire nation's history rested on the shoulders of one man. Imagine standing in the ruins of a once great kingdom, surrounded by the whispers of ancestors who had walked with God, who had built a temple so magnificent that kings and queens traveled across the world to see it. Now that temple was dust. The walls of Jerusalem had been shattered. The chosen people of God were exiles, scattered like ashes in the wind. Who would remember them? Who would remind them of who they once were? That burden fell upon Ezra, a priest, a scribe, and a man obsessed with the story of God's people. He wasn't just a historian. He was a man on a mission, determined to rescue the identity of a broken nation. At a time when hope was fading and foreign kings ruled over the remnants of Judah, Ezra took up his pen, not just to record history, but to revive a forgotten faith. He wasn't writing for scholars or kings. He was writing for the survivors, for the scattered, for those who wondered if God had abandoned them forever. Ezra's life was marked by devotion. Born into a priestly lineage, he was raised in the sacred texts, trained to know the law inside and out. But Ezra was not just a man of study, he was a man of action. He lived during the Persian rule in a time when the Jews were returning from exile, confused, divided, and desperately needing direction. They needed to remember where they had come from. They needed a revival, not just of their nation, but of their hearts. Ezra was the man God would use to bring it. His conversion wasn't the kind that comes from rebellion. It was the kind that comes from revelation. Ezra saw what no one else saw. While others looked at the ruins and accepted them as reality, Ezra saw them as a warning. The people of Judah had fallen because they had forgotten their God. Their kings had chased after power, their priests had compromised the truth, and their people had followed idols into destruction. But God had not abandoned them. He had left them a map, their own history. If they could remember the past, they could reclaim the future. And so Ezra wrote. The Book of Chronicles is not just a history lesson, it's a sermon, a warning, and a plea. Ezra carefully retold the story of Judah's kings, not to entertain, but to convict. He highlighted their successes and their failures, showing with brutal honesty what happens when a nation follows God and what happens when it turns away. Unlike the books of Kings, which focused on both Israel and Judah, Ezra zeroed in on the kingdom of Judah alone, the last remaining remnant of God's chosen people. He wanted to teach them that their history was not a cycle of meaningless rises and falls. It was a divine pattern with consequences that could be avoided if they would only listen. But what made Ezra different from the prophets before him? Why did his message last when so many others had been ignored? Because Ezra didn't just write about the past, he acted in the present. He didn't just call for repentance. He led a movement. He personally led exiles back to Jerusalem. He confronted sin in the nation, and he called the people to renew their covenant with God. He wasn't just a scribe recording the fall of Judah. He was a priest trying to rebuild it. Yet, like so many prophets and leaders before him, Ezra's final years were shrouded in mystery. Some say he died peacefully after his mission was complete, while others believe he was rejected by his own people, just as so many truth-tellers before him had been. But his legacy did not die. His writings became the foundation of Jewish history. His accounts of kings and priests, of victories and failures, would shape the identity of God's people for generations. And through his words, Ezra still speaks. He speaks to anyone who has ever looked at a broken world and wondered if restoration is possible. He speaks to those who have seen the failures of their leaders and long for something more. And he speaks to us today, reminding us that history is not just a record, it's a warning, a lesson, and an invitation to return to God before it's too late. Now, with Ezra's purpose in mind, we turn to his masterpiece, the Book of 2 Chronicles. A book that does more than recount history. It reveals the soul of a nation, the rise of kings, and the consequences of their choices. It is a story of power, betrayal, revival, and judgment. And through it all, one question lingers. Will we learn from history, or are we doomed to repeat it? Following the death of King David, a new era began, one unlike anything Israel had ever seen. The warrior king had secured the land, but it was his son Solomon who would elevate the kingdom to its greatest glory. If David was the fighter, Solomon was the builder. If David had shed blood, Solomon would usher in peace. If David had dreamed of a temple, Solomon would construct it with such magnificence that the world would stand in awe. But even in this golden age, the seeds of destruction were being planted. The very wisdom that made Solomon famous would later be drowned out by the whispers of temptation. The prosperity that dazzled the world would eventually become a snare. Power, wealth, and unchecked desires. Could a kingdom so rich truly stand forever? The transition of power had been uneasy. Though Solomon was chosen by David and anointed by God, there were those who sought the throne for themselves. But once he was established, Solomon did something unexpected. He asked God for wisdom, not wealth, not military might, not even a long life, just wisdom to govern his people. And God answered. That very night, Solomon had a divine encounter. The Lord appeared to him and said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." 2 Chronicles 1:7. Imagine that. An unlimited wish from the creator of the universe. But Solomon, recognizing the weight of his position, asked for a discerning heart to govern Israel. Pleased with his humility, God granted him wisdom beyond measure, so great that there was none like him before, nor would there ever be again. It was as if overnight the young king's mind became a reservoir of divine understanding. He could solve disputes with uncanny insight, compose proverbs filled with eternal truths, and write songs that captured the human experience. Foreign rulers, priests, and scholars traveled from distant lands just to hear him speak. His wisdom was legendary, a gift from God himself. But wisdom alone would not be enough to sustain his kingdom, because wisdom without obedience could still lead to ruin. With wisdom in his heart and wealth in his hands, Solomon embarked on his greatest project, the Temple of the Lord. It would be the crown jewel of Jerusalem, a dwelling place for the Most High. For centuries, Israel had worshipped in a tent, the tabernacle, a portable sanctuary built during their wilderness journey. But now, for the first time, there would be a permanent home for the Ark of the Covenant, a structure so breathtaking that even foreign kings would marvel at its splendor. The construction was an architectural wonder: cedar from Lebanon, gold from Ophir, precious stones and bronze pillars, all meticulously designed to reflect the glory of God. It took 7 years to complete, but when it was finished, it was unlike anything on earth. And then came the moment of dedication. As Solomon stood before the altar, he lifted his hands toward heaven and prayed. He did not ask for military dominance or endless prosperity. He prayed that God would always hear his people when they cried out, whether in victory or defeat, in faithfulness or rebellion. At that moment, fire fell from heaven. The presence of the Lord filled the temple like a cloud, so thick that the priests could not even stand to minister. It was a divine seal. God was among his people. The kingdom was at its peak, and Solomon was its radiant king. But the seeds of his downfall were already being sown. Solomon's fame spread beyond Israel. Distant lands heard of his wisdom, his wealth, and his temple. Among those drawn to his court was the Queen of Sheba, a ruler from the distant land of Ethiopia. She arrived in Jerusalem with a massive entourage: camels carrying spices, gold, and precious stones. But she didn't come just to admire Solomon's riches. She came to test his wisdom. She posed questions, riddles, and mysteries, things no ordinary man could answer. But Solomon, with his God-given insight, responded to each one with ease. Seeing his palace, his officials, the food on his table, and the burnt offerings in the temple, she was overwhelmed. The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and wisdom is true, she declared, but I did not believe it until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half the greatness of your wisdom was told to me. 2 Chronicles 9:5-6. But this was more than a diplomatic visit. The Queen of Sheba's journey represented something greater: nations recognizing the presence of God in Israel. She was a symbol of how, when a leader walks in divine wisdom, even the world takes notice. Yet Solomon's wisdom, no matter how great, could not protect him from the snares of his own heart. At some point, the man who once asked only for wisdom began to crave something else. His wealth grew beyond measure. Gold poured into his kingdom, so much that silver was considered worthless. He built fleets of ships, expanded his palace, and indulged in every luxury imaginable. And then, the final compromise: foreign wives. Solomon married hundreds of women from pagan nations: Egyptians, Moabites, Ammonites, Sidonians, and Hittites. It was more than political alliances. He allowed his heart to drift. These women brought their gods with them, and Solomon, the wisest man on earth, began to worship them. The man who had built the most magnificent temple for Yahweh was now erecting altars for foreign gods. He burned incense to Ashtoreth, bowed before Chemosh, and offered sacrifices to Molech. The very wisdom that had made him great could not protect him from the seduction of power, pleasure, and compromise. And so the Lord spoke to Solomon just as he had at the beginning, but this time it was not a blessing. "Since you have not kept my covenant and my statutes," God declared, "I will surely tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates." 1 Kings 11:11. It would not happen in Solomon's lifetime for the sake of David, but the kingdom would fracture. His son would inherit a throne on the brink of collapse. The golden age of Israel was ending. Solomon's story is more than history. It is a warning. We live in a time where success is the ultimate goal, where nations rise on wealth and fall on corruption, where wisdom is valued but integrity is optional. How often have we seen leaders, celebrities, and even pastors rise to prominence only to lose themselves in their own desires? Solomon had everything: wisdom, wealth, power. But in the end, he lost the very thing that mattered most: his devotion to God. His story begs the question, is prosperity a blessing, or can it become a curse? When does success blind us to our dependence on God? When do the gifts we receive turn into the very things that lead us astray? Solomon's reign teaches us that no amount of wisdom, no level of prosperity, and no height of success can replace obedience to God. Without it, even the strongest kingdoms will fall. And as we move forward in 2 Chronicles, we will see just how quickly the throne of Israel began to crumble. The golden age was over. What came next was an age of division, rebellion, and exile. If this exploration of Solomon's rise and fall has given you insight, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Let's learn from history before we repeat it. Now, let's continue this journey, because what happens after Solomon's reign will change the course of Israel forever. The golden age of Solomon had come to an end, but instead of a smooth transition into a new era of strength, Israel teetered on the edge of collapse. The kingdom, once the envy of the world, was now vulnerable, and all it would take was one reckless decision to send it spiraling into chaos. That decision would come at the hands of Solomon's son, Rehoboam, a young, entitled king who had inherited power but not the wisdom to wield it. Rehoboam had every opportunity to be great. He had the legacy of David and Solomon before him. He had the temple, the wealth, the power, all laid at his feet. But there was one thing he lacked: discernment. Unlike his father, he did not ask God for wisdom. Unlike his grandfather, he did not seek after God's heart. Instead, he sought the approval of those who flattered him. The moment of decision came swiftly. After Solomon's death, the people of Israel, weary from years of heavy taxation and labor under the grandeur of Solomon's projects, approached Rehoboam with a simple request: "Lighten our yoke, and we will serve you." 2 Chronicles 10:4. It was a plea for relief, an opportunity for Rehoboam to win their loyalty and secure his rule. At first, the young king seemed to show promise. He asked the elders, those who had advised his father, what he should do. Their answer was clear: "If you will be kind to these people, and please them, and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your servants." 2 Chronicles 10:7. But Rehoboam was not satisfied with this counsel. Kindness? Servant leadership? No, he wanted to establish dominance, so he turned to his friends, the young men who had grown up with him in the palace. These were not wise statesmen, but privileged elites who had never known hardship. They told him what he wanted to hear. "Tell them, My father laid a heavy yoke on you. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions, said Chronicles 10:10-11. And so, with arrogance in his heart and a thirst for power, Rehoboam delivered his answer. He stood before the people of Israel, not as a leader who listened, but as a tyrant who demanded submission. He would not ease their burden, he would increase it. It was the moment that changed everything. The crowd erupted. Their hopes for a just king had been shattered. They had seen the wealth of Solomon, but had tasted none of it. They had endured the labor, the taxation, the sacrifices, all for a throne that now promised even more suffering. The northern tribes had heard enough. Their response was swift, brutal, and final. What share do we have in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, Israel, look after your own house, David. 2 Chronicles 10:16. With those words, the kingdom was broken. 10 tribes rejected Rehoboam's rule, forming the northern kingdom of Israel under a new king, Jeroboam. Only Judah and Benjamin remained loyal to Rehoboam, marking the beginning of a divided kingdom, a wound that would never fully heal. But was this rebellion purely human defiance, or was God orchestrating something bigger? Long before Rehoboam's fateful decision, a prophecy had already been spoken. A man named Jeroboam, once a servant of Solomon, had been visited by the prophet Ahijah. Ahijah took a new cloak, tore it into 12 pieces, and handed 10 of them to Jeroboam, saying, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. See, I am going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes." 1 Kings 11:31. God had seen Solomon's idolatry and had decreed that his kingdom would be divided. Jeroboam was the instrument of this judgment, but what began as a divine prophecy soon became a political power play. Jeroboam seized his opportunity. As Rehoboam's arrogance pushed the people away, Jeroboam positioned himself as the champion of the oppressed. He became king of the north, ruling from Shechem. But instead of leading the people back to true worship, he did something shocking. He built golden calves and placed them in Bethel and Dan, saying, "Here are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." 2 Chronicles 11:15. The very sin that had led to the downfall of Solomon, idolatry, became the foundation of Jeroboam's rule. He feared that if the people traveled to Jerusalem to worship at the temple, they would turn back to Rehoboam. So he created his own religion, complete with false gods, new festivals, and illegitimate priests. The division of the kingdom was not just political, it was spiritual. 2 nations now stood where there had once been one, and both had turned their backs on God. Rehoboam, now ruling a weakened kingdom, should have turned to God in repentance. Instead, he fortified his cities, preparing for war. But his real enemy was not the northern tribes. It was an old power rising again. In the 5th year of his reign, disaster struck. Egypt, under King Shishak, launched an invasion. They swept through Judah, capturing fortified cities one by one. Finally, they reached Jerusalem. Rehoboam's pride had led to division. His idolatry had led to weakness. And now, his kingdom lay vulnerable before an enemy. As Shishak's forces surrounded Jerusalem, Rehoboam and his leaders rushed to the temple, not in arrogance, but in terror. They cried out to the Lord, pleading for mercy. Then came a message from the prophet Shemaiah. "This is what the Lord says. You have abandoned me, therefore I now abandon you to Shishak." 2 Chronicles 12:5. The leaders humbled themselves, and because of their repentance, God relented partially. He would not allow Shishak to destroy Jerusalem completely, but Judah would now live under Egyptian oppression. Shishak plundered the temple, stripping it of its treasures. The golden shields that Solomon had crafted, symbols of Israel's glory, were taken as spoils of war. In their place, Rehoboam made bronze shields, an imitation of the former splendor, a hollow reminder of what had been lost. The story of Rehoboam is not just ancient history. It is a warning for today. How many leaders have we seen rise to power, full of promise, only to fall because of arrogance? How often have nations suffered because of rulers who refuse to listen, who surround themselves with flatterers instead of wise counsel? Rehoboam's mistake was not just his harsh words, it was his refusal to seek God. He ruled with pride instead of humility, with force instead of wisdom. And his kingdom paid the price. Jeroboam, too, is a lesson in leadership gone wrong. Given an opportunity by God himself, he chose control over faith, power over obedience. His insecurity led him to build false gods rather than trust in the Lord. Even Egypt's invasion speaks to us today. When a nation turns from God, its strength is drained. Wealth disappears, enemies rise, and once great societies are left clinging to imitations of past glory. The division of Israel was not just political, it was spiritual. And without a foundation in God, no kingdom, no nation, no leader can stand. If this deep dive into Rehoboam and the fall of Israel has opened your eyes, share this with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to check out our ebooks for deeper studies into the Bible's greatest lessons. The kingdom was broken, but the story was far from over. What came next was an era of kings, war, revival, and ruin. The question now was, who would rise and who would fall? The kingdom was divided, but the story of Judah was far from over. With Israel torn from its grasp, Judah found itself in a struggle for survival. Would it remain faithful to God, or would it fall into the same idolatry and corruption that plagued the northern kingdom? The answer, as we'll see, was not so simple. The throne of Judah became a spiritual battleground where some kings fought to bring their people back to God while others led them into destruction. It was a roller coaster of faith, a cycle of revival and rebellion, victory and downfall. And at the center of it all were two kings, one who won a war he should have lost, and another who started as a champion of faith but ended in tragic failure. The dust had barely settled from the split between Israel and Judah when war erupted. On one side stood Jeroboam, the king of Israel, leading an army of 800,000 men. On the other stood Abijah, the son of Rehoboam, with just 400,000. Outnumbered 2-1, Judah had no earthly chance of victory. But this battle would not be decided by numbers. It would be decided by faith. Abijah, though not a perfect king, understood something crucial. Judah still had the covenant with God. As the armies gathered, Abijah climbed a hill and shouted across the battlefield, delivering a speech that was as much a declaration of war as it was a sermon. Don't you know that the Lord, the God of Israel, has given the kingship of Israel to David and his descendants forever? He proclaimed. 2 Chronicles 13:5. He reminded the Israelites that Jeroboam had rebelled against God's chosen line, that he had cast out the true priests and set up golden calves for worship. Judah, on the other hand, still had the temple, the sacrifices, the true priests of God. But Jeroboam wasn't interested in a theological debate. He was here to win a war. While Abijah was speaking, Jeroboam sent troops behind Judah's army, setting a trap. Suddenly, Judah was surrounded. They were not only outnumbered, but now they were completely encircled. There was no way out. This should have been the end for Abijah. This should have been the moment Judah was wiped off the map. But instead of surrendering, they did the one thing that could save them. They cried out to God. Then the men of Judah gave a battle cry, and at the sound of their cry, God routed Jeroboam and all Israel before Abijah and Judah. 2 Chronicles 13:15. The impossible happened. The army that should have been crushed turned the tide. As Judah's soldiers raised their voices in desperation, something supernatural took place. God himself stepped in. Jeroboam's forces collapsed in fear, their ranks shattered, their warriors slaughtered. By the time the battle was over, Israel had lost 500,000 men. It was one of the most lopsided victories in history. What's the lesson here? It's not about numbers, strength, or strategy. It's about where you place your trust. Judah should have lost, but they had God on their side. Israel should have won, but they had built their kingdom on rebellion and idolatry. Victory is never about earthly odds. It's about divine favor. But Abijah's reign was short. After 3 years, he died, and the kingdom passed to his son. And this is where Judah's story took another unexpected turn. The name of Abijah's son was Asa, and when he took the throne, Judah was still recovering from the wars of his father and grandfather. But unlike them, Asa was different. He didn't just want to win battles. He wanted to change the heart of the nation. From the very beginning, Asa launched a full-scale spiritual reformation. He tore down the idols that had crept into Judah. He expelled the male shrine prostitutes who had brought pagan corruption into the land. He even removed his own grandmother, Maacah, from her position as queen mother because she had built an Asherah pole, a symbol of idolatry. But Asa wasn't just about destruction, he was about restoration. He rebuilt the altar of the Lord, reinstituted worship, and called the people back to the covenant. And because of this, God gave Judah peace. For 10 years there was no war, the land flourished. But then came the test. A massive army from Cush, modern-day Ethiopia, advanced against Judah, an army of 1 million men, the largest military force recorded in the Bible. Once again, Judah was vastly outnumbered, but Asa did what his grandfather had failed to do. He didn't turn to alliances or his own strength. He turned to God. Lord, there is no one like you to help the powerless against the mighty. Help us, Lord our God, for we rely on you. 2 Chronicles 14:11. And once again God delivered. The Cushite army was shattered, and Judah emerged victorious. Asa had proven himself a king who not only ruled well, but knew where his strength came from. For decades, Asa continued to lead Judah in righteousness. He renewed the covenant, brought the people into worship, and even reformed the judicial system. He was a man who walked with God. But then something changed. After 35 years of faithfulness, Asa made a fateful mistake. A new threat arose, not from a foreign invader, but from Israel. The northern kingdom, now under King Baasha, began fortifying the city of Ramah to block Judah's access to trade and expansion. It was an act of war, a provocation Asa could not ignore. But instead of turning to God, as he had before, Asa made a deal with Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, Syria. He took the silver and gold from the temple, the very treasures dedicated to God, and sent them as a bribe to buy Syria's help. It worked. Ben-Hadad attacked Israel, forcing Baasha to retreat. The crisis was over, but in the eyes of God, Asa had failed. A prophet named Hanani confronted him, "Because you relied on the king of Aram and not on the Lord your God. The army of the king of Aram has escaped from your hand." Were not the Cushites and Libyans a mighty army with great numbers of chariots and horsemen? Yet, when you relied on the Lord, he delivered them into your hand. 2 Chronicles 16:7-8. Asa, the once faithful king, had stopped trusting God. He had turned to human alliances instead of divine power. And now, he would face the consequences. From that moment on, Asa's kingdom was plagued with conflict. His final years were marked by suffering. He developed a severe disease in his feet, yet even then, he refused to seek God. The king who had started so strong, who had trusted God in his youth, died in bitterness and defiance. Judah's story in these chapters is a powerful reminder that faith is not about how we start, it's about how we finish. Abijah won a battle against impossible odds, but his reign was short. Asa ruled well for decades, but in his final years, he forgot where his strength came from. How many today have started strong in their faith only to let fear and pride take control later in life? How many victories have we seen in the past only to turn to human solutions when the next crisis comes? Asa's downfall is a warning. A lifetime of faithfulness does not guarantee a strong finish. We must choose to trust God not just in our early years, but until our final breath. The story of Judah is just beginning. What will the next king bring, revival or ruin? The kingdom of Judah had seen kings who wavered, kings who compromised, and kings who fell. But now, rising from the ashes of Asa's failure, came a man who dared to trust God in ways few before him ever had. His name was Jehoshaphat, and his reign would become one of the most extraordinary testaments to faith in Israel's history. At first glance, Jehoshaphat seemed like an ordinary ruler. He inherited the throne from his father, Asa, and faced the same struggles: hostile enemies, political pressures, and the ever-present temptation of idolatry. But Jehoshaphat was different. He didn't rely on human strength, alliances, or military might. His trust was in something, or rather someone, far greater. His story would include some of the most astonishing miracles ever recorded in Judah's history. A war won without lifting a single sword. A battle fought with voices instead of weapons. A lesson in what happens when we truly trust God. But like all great men, Jehoshaphat had his flaws, and his greatest mistake would not come on the battlefield. It would come in an alliance that nearly destroyed everything. Jehoshaphat began his reign by doing something radical. He tore down the high places of idol worship. This wasn't just a small religious reform. It was a declaration of war against everything that had corrupted Judah. His father, Asa, had started strong but compromised at the end. Jehoshaphat? He was determined to finish well, but it wasn't just what he destroyed, it was what he built. Instead of fortifying cities and expanding Judah's military, Jehoshaphat sent out priests and Levites to teach the people the word of God. He understood something that modern leaders often forget. Real security isn't found in weapons or wealth. It's found in a nation that fears God. And what happened next proved him right. As news spread that Jehoshaphat had turned Judah back to God, something incredible occurred. The nations around Judah grew afraid. The Bible says that the fear of the Lord fell on all the kingdoms of the lands surrounding Judah, so that they did not go to war against Jehoshaphat. 2 Chronicles 17:10. Think about that. Jehoshaphat didn't have to fight for peace. His faith in God created it. How many nations today invest billions in military defense, yet still live in fear? How many leaders believe power comes from force instead of faith? Jehoshaphat understood a truth we desperately need today. When a people walk in righteousness, God himself becomes their protector. But faith, no matter how strong, is always tested, and Jehoshaphat's greatest test was about to come. One day, messengers came running into Jerusalem, breathless with panic. A vast army was approaching, an alliance of Moabites, Ammonites, and Meunites. They weren't just coming to raid Judah, they were coming to destroy it. Jehoshaphat had two options: rely on his military strength or turn to God. He chose God. He called the entire nation to fast and pray. The people of Judah gathered in the temple, trembling not from fear, but from expectation. And there, standing before the assembly, Jehoshaphat lifted his voice to heaven. "We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you." 2 Chronicles 20:12. Imagine a modern leader standing before his people, facing an overwhelming enemy and saying, "We don't have a plan, we don't have a strategy, but we have God." Would the world call that foolish? Perhaps, but God called it faith. And then came the answer. Through a prophet, God spoke, "Do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army, for the battle is not yours, but God's." 2 Chronicles 20:15. Then came the most shocking instruction of all. Jehoshaphat was told not to fight, not to strategize, not to send out his best warriors. Instead, he was to send out the worshippers. The next morning, as Judah's army marched to meet their enemies, there were no battle cries, no swords drawn, only the sound of voices lifted in praise. "Give thanks to the Lord, for his love endures forever." 2 Chronicles 20:21. And at that moment, something miraculous happened. The enemy armies turned on each other. Confusion broke out in their camp. By the time Judah arrived, their enemies had already destroyed themselves. Without lifting a single weapon, Judah had won the battle. What does this tell us? That sometimes the greatest weapon is not a sword, but a song. That victory comes not from strength, but from surrender. That when we trust God completely, he fights battles we could never win on our own. Jehoshaphat had faith in God, but he wasn't perfect. And his greatest mistake came not in battle, but in an alliance. He made a political decision that would haunt Judah for years to come. He allied himself with Ahab, the wicked king of Israel. Why? Perhaps he wanted peace between the divided kingdoms. Perhaps he thought he could influence Ahab for good. But whatever his reasoning, it was a mistake. Ahab was married to Jezebel, the most infamous queen in Israel's history, a woman who promoted Baal worship, persecuted God's prophets, and led Israel into the darkest idolatry. And yet, Jehoshaphat allowed his son to marry Ahab's daughter. If that wasn't bad enough, Ahab later convinced Jehoshaphat to go to war alongside him. The prophet Micaiah warned that it would end in disaster, but Ahab refused to listen. The result? Ahab was killed in battle, and Jehoshaphat barely escaped with his life. When he returned to Jerusalem, a prophet confronted him. "Should you help the wicked and love those who hate the Lord? Because of this, the wrath of the Lord is upon you." 2 Chronicles 19:2. It was a hard lesson, but one that rings true today. How often do we compromise for the sake of alliances? How many believers join forces with corrupt systems, thinking they can change them, only to be pulled into the same corruption? Jehoshaphat had trusted God in battle, but in politics he had compromised, and it nearly destroyed his legacy. Jehoshaphat's story is one of faith and failure, victory and compromise. It teaches us that trusting God leads to impossible victories, but compromising with the world leads to disaster. So where do we stand today? Are we facing battles that seem unwinnable? Are we trying to fight in our own strength instead of seeking God? Are we forming alliances that pull us away from our convictions? Jehoshaphat's life is a warning and an encouragement. Trusting God works. It worked against invading armies. It worked against impossible odds. And it still works today. If this story has challenged you, share it with someone who needs encouragement. And check out our ebooks for more in-depth Bible studies. Next, we turn to a king who could have learned from Jehoshaphat's victories, but instead repeated his worst mistakes. Stay tuned for the tragic reign of King Jehoram. For a moment, it seemed that Judah had a fighting chance. Under Jehoshaphat, the kingdom had seen peace, prosperity, and spiritual revival. But as history has often shown, a godly father does not always produce a godly son. The moment Jehoram took the throne, the legacy of righteousness collapsed into bloodshed and betrayal. It was as if all the faith, wisdom, and strength of his father had been tossed aside like an unwanted crown. Instead of seeking God, Jehoram sought power at any cost, even if it meant killing his own family. And he didn't stop there. His reign would introduce a new level of wickedness into Judah, one so deep that it would almost wipe out the royal bloodline of David forever. A kingdom that had once placed its trust in God was now ruled by a man who trusted only in himself. And his son, Ahaziah, would be no different, just another pawn in a game of destruction played by one of the most wicked queens in history. The throne of Judah had become a curse, and the consequences were just beginning. As Jehoshaphat lay on his deathbed, he must have believed that his son, Jehoram, would continue the legacy of faithfulness he had built. But Jehoram had other plans. Unlike his father, he wasn't interested in seeking God or ruling with justice. He had married Athaliah, the daughter of the infamous King Ahab and Queen Jezebel of Israel. That meant the influence of Baal worship and political corruption had seeped into Judah's royal family. Jehoram didn't wait long to show his true colors. As soon as he secured the throne, he ordered the execution of all his brothers, every single one of them. They were his competition, and in his mind there was no room for rivals. Imagine that. The very brothers he grew up with, the ones who shared his childhood, his bloodline, his memories, he slaughtered them without hesitation. A family torn apart by greed, paranoia, and the thirst for power. The weight of the Davidic dynasty meant nothing to him. His own flesh and blood were simply obstacles to be removed. But the bloodshed didn't stop there. Jehoram continued his reign of terror by wiping out other noblemen in Judah who might threaten his rule. He surrounded himself with the worst kind of advisors, idol worshippers, and corrupt politicians who cared only for their own gain. He reintroduced Baal worship to Judah, leading the people astray just as Ahab had done in Israel. The nation that had once followed the true God now bowed to idols, and Jehoram made sure of it. Then came the consequences. First, the Edomites, who had been under Judah's control, rebelled. They saw Jehoram's weakness and seized their chance for freedom. Despite sending his army, Jehoram failed to reclaim them. He was losing his grip on power. Then the prophet Elijah, yes, the same Elijah who had confronted Ahab, sent Jehoram a chilling message. This is what the Lord, the God of your father David, says. You have not followed the ways of your father Jehoshaphat or of Asa king of Judah, but you have followed the ways of the kings of Israel, and you have led Judah into idolatry. So now the Lord is about to strike your people, your sons, your wives, and everything that belongs to you with a heavy blow. 2 Chronicles 21:12-14. And that's exactly what happened. Jehoram was struck with a painful disease, one so severe that over the course of 2 years, his intestines rotted away inside him. His suffering was so horrific that his own people refused to mourn him when he died. He was buried in Jerusalem, but not in the tombs of the kings. He had disgraced his father's name, and in death he was cast aside. But his wickedness didn't die with him. After Jehoram's brutal reign came his son Ahaziah. But make no mistake, Ahaziah was not truly in control. His mother, Athaliah, was the one pulling the strings. At just 22 years old, Ahaziah became king, and almost immediately he followed in the footsteps of his grandfather, Ahab. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, just as his mother and her family had taught him. Athaliah had raised him to trust in Baal, to ignore the God of Judah, and to seek alliances with the corrupt rulers of Israel. And so when Israel's king Joram, Ahab's son, went to war against the Arameans, Ahaziah rushed to his side. But this decision would be his downfall. A man named Jehu had been anointed by God to bring judgment on Ahab's wicked dynasty. And when Jehu began his ruthless purge, Ahaziah got caught in the crossfire. As Jehu's forces executed King Joram, Ahaziah fled for his life. But he didn't get far. Jehu's men hunted him down and struck him fatally. Ahaziah's reign had lasted only 1 year. He had been nothing more than a pawn in his mother's deadly game, a puppet king controlled by an evil queen. But what Athaliah did next was even worse. When Athaliah heard that her son was dead, she saw an opportunity. Instead of mourning Ahaziah, she made a move that shocked the nation. She seized the throne for herself. No woman had ever ruled Judah before. But Athaliah had no interest in ruling as a motherly figure. She wanted absolute power, and to secure it, she did the unthinkable. She ordered the execution of every royal descendant, her own grandsons. One by one, the children of David's lineage were slaughtered. The promise God had made to David, that his line would endure forever, was now hanging by a thread. The house of David, which had stood for generations, was almost completely wiped out. It seemed like darkness had won. The legacy of faith that had once defined Judah was now buried beneath the ambitions of a queen who had no regard for God. But she had missed one. Unbeknownst to Athaliah, one baby boy had been hidden away. Joash, the last surviving heir of David's throne. His nurse and his aunt, Jehosheba, had smuggled him out before the massacre and hid him in the temple of the Lord. For 6 years, Athaliah ruled Judah with an iron grip, oblivious to the secret growing in the temple. But soon, the rightful king would rise. The reigns of Jehoram, Ahaziah, and Athaliah paint a chilling picture of what happens when leaders abandon God for their own ambition. Their rule was filled with treachery, bloodshed, and destruction, all because they refused to submit to the one true king. And today, we see the same patterns. Leaders who put power above people. Nations that embrace corruption and false gods. Families torn apart by greed and betrayal. The story of these wicked rulers is not just history, it is a warning. Power can destroy. Compromise with evil has consequences, and those who reject God will ultimately fall. But even in the darkest moments, God is never absent. Even when a queen tried to erase the promise of David's line, God preserved it. Even when Judah was at its lowest, he was still working behind the scenes. And the question for us today is this: are we following in the footsteps of Jehoram, Ahaziah, and Athaliah, chasing power, making compromises, turning from God? Or are we standing firm in faith, trusting that he will fulfill his promises, no matter how dark the times may seem? If this deep dive into Judah's darkest days has challenged you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Next, we'll see how God restored Judah through a hidden king. The story is far from over. The kingdom of Judah had never seen chaos like this before. The throne of David, once the pride of Israel, had become a blood-stained battlefield, ruled by treachery and fear. A queen named Athaliah, the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, had just committed one of the most unthinkable crimes in biblical history. To secure her power, she had slaughtered nearly every descendant of David. A mad woman on the throne, a royal bloodline nearly erased, and a nation suffocating under darkness. This was the state of Judah. But God was not done with his people. Unknown to the queen, a single child had been hidden away in the temple, guarded by a handful of faithful priests and a courageous woman. For 6 years, the boy remained a secret, growing up in the house of God, surrounded by the sacred scrolls and the whispers of a coming revolution. His name was Joash, and when the time was right, he would be revealed, not just as a child, but as the rightful king of Judah. It was a moment of defiance against the darkness. The high priest Jehoiada, a man of unshakable faith, gathered the commanders of Judah's army, the Levites, and the leaders of the people. The time had come. The tyranny of Athaliah had to end. In a carefully orchestrated plan, Jehoiada brought Joash out from hiding and presented him before the people. The sight of a young boy, innocent yet carrying the full weight of David's legacy, sparked something in the hearts of the people. This was their true king. With the temple guards standing ready, Jehoiada anointed Joash and placed the crown upon his head. As the oil flowed down the boy's forehead, a great shout erupted from the people. "Long live the king!" Athaliah heard the noise and rushed to the temple. When she saw the young Joash standing there, crowned and anointed, her face twisted in rage. She screamed, "Treason! Treason!" But the people did not rise to defend her. They had seen too much of her cruelty. The soldiers dragged her from the temple and executed her. At last, Judah had a rightful king. Joash's reign began under the wise and godly leadership of Jehoiada. The priest acted as a father to the young king, guiding him in the ways of the Lord. Under their combined rule, Judah flourished. Pagan idols were torn down. The temple of the Lord, which had been neglected for years, was repaired. The people returned to worshiping Yahweh, and a sense of righteousness was restored to the land. For years, Joash followed God. He listened to Jehoiada's counsel. He upheld the laws of Moses. The kingdom of Judah, once on the brink of collapse, was now stable and thriving. But then something changed. Jehoiada was old now. His body weakened, but his spirit remained strong. He had been the voice of wisdom in Joash's life, the mentor who had shaped him into a godly king. Then at the age of 130, Jehoiada died. The man who had protected Joash as an infant, who had guided him for decades, was gone. The people of Judah gave him a burial fit for a king, but the loss of Jehoiada left something hollow in Joash, something that would soon consume him. It didn't take long for new voices to whisper in the king's ear. The officials of Judah, men who had resented Jehoiada's strict devotion to God, now saw an opportunity. They approached Joash with flattery, praising his wisdom and urging him to make his own decisions that would separate him from the old ways of Jehoiada. And Joash listened. Slowly, the reforms that had once defined his reign began to unravel. Idolatry crept back into Judah. The people turned away from God, and Joash did nothing to stop them. Worse yet, he actively participated in their rebellion. But God was watching. The Lord sent prophets to warn Joash, pleading with him to return to righteousness. He ignored them. He had turned his heart away from the God who had once saved him. And then, in an act that would forever stain his legacy, Joash committed an unforgivable betrayal. One of Jehoiada's sons, Zechariah, rose up as a prophet and confronted the king. With fire in his voice, he declared, "Because you have forsaken the Lord, he has also forsaken you." 2 Chronicles 24:20. Joash did not repent. Instead, he ordered Zechariah's death. The very son of the man who had saved Joash's life, the priest who had risked everything to protect him, was now being stoned to death at Joash's command. As Zechariah lay dying, he cried out, May the Lord see this and call you to account. 2 Chronicles 24:22. And God did. The downfall of Joash was swift and brutal. Shortly after Zechariah's murder, Judah came under attack from the Arameans. The once powerful kingdom that had thrived under Joash's early reign was now vulnerable. God allowed a small Aramean army to invade Judah and wreak havoc, leaving the nation humiliated and weak. Joash, once a king anointed by God, now lay sick and defenseless. But his punishment wasn't over yet. Two of his own servants, men who had witnessed his betrayal of Jehoiada's family, assassinated him in his bed. His body was not given an honorable burial in the tombs of the kings. Instead, he was cast aside, a forgotten ruler, a man who had turned against everything he once stood for. His story is one of the most tragic in the Bible. Joash began as a righteous king, a child rescued from slaughter, a boy raised in the house of God. He had every opportunity to follow the Lord, every advantage given to him. But when his mentor died, he lost his way. The life of Joash is a warning to all of us. 1. Faith cannot be borrowed. Joash followed God as long as Jehoiada was alive, but when the priest was gone, his faith crumbled. Many people rely on their parents' faith, their pastor's guidance, or their church's traditions. But when those influences are removed, what remains? Is your faith truly yours, or is it dependent on someone else? 2. Beware of flattery and false counsel. Joash was easily swayed by corrupt officials. He abandoned God for the sake of pleasing men. How often do we let the voices of culture, pressure, or convenience lead us away from God's truth? 3. Betrayal has consequences. Joash turned on the very man who saved him, and in the end, he was betrayed by his own servants. When we reject God's ways, we will eventually reap what we sow. 4. A good start doesn't guarantee a good finish. Joash's early reign was glorious. His final years were disastrous. It's not enough to start strong. We must finish strong. Joash could have been remembered as a great king, a child of prophecy, a ruler who honored God. Instead, his name became a cautionary tale. So ask yourself, are you standing firm in your faith or just borrowing it from others? The kingdom of Judah had seen its fair share of righteous rulers, but as history had proven time and again, prosperity often carried a hidden danger: pride. The line of David was supposed to represent faithfulness to God, a dynasty that would reflect his divine kingship. But one by one, its kings were lured into arrogance, believing their success was their own doing. This wasn't just a story of military conquests and royal decrees. It was the slow but inevitable unraveling of men who started well but ended in disgrace. Amaziah, Uzziah, and Jotham, 3 kings who each had a moment of glory but allowed their hearts to turn away. Their stories are warnings, echoes of a truth that still rings today. Pride always comes before the fall. Amaziah, the son of Joash, began his reign on a promising note. He was 25 years old, young, ambitious, and eager to bring strength back to Judah. Unlike some of his predecessors, he sought to follow the Lord, but his obedience was half-hearted at best. The Bible tells us that he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, but not wholeheartedly. 2 Chronicles 25:2. That one phrase would define his entire rule. Amaziah had a grand plan. He wanted to reclaim lost territories and restore Judah's military dominance. But instead of relying on God, he turned to mercenaries, hiring 100,000 Israelite soldiers to fight his battles. This decision may have seemed wise from a strategic standpoint, but it was an act of disobedience. The northern kingdom of Israel had long abandoned the true God, filling their land with idolatry. A prophet came to Amaziah with a message that should have been obvious. O king, do not let the army of Israel go with you, for the Lord is not with Israel, not with any of the people of Ephraim. Even if you go and fight courageously in battle, God will overthrow you before the enemy, for God has the power to help or to overthrow. 2 Chronicles 25, 7-8. The message was clear. Victory wasn't about numbers. It was about God's presence. Amaziah was at a crossroads. Would he trust in God alone, or would he put his faith in his hired army? To his credit, he listened. But there was a problem. He had already paid the mercenaries a massive sum of money, and now he hesitated. He asked the prophet, "But what about the 100 talents I paid for these Israelite troops?" 2 Chronicles 25:9. The prophet's response was one of the greatest reminders of God's provision in all of Scripture. The Lord can give you much more than that. Amaziah reluctantly sent the mercenaries away. But now those mercenaries, furious at being dismissed, turned against him. As Amaziah marched to battle, these rogue soldiers raided Judah's towns, killing, plundering, and setting cities on fire. Though Amaziah won his war against Edom, his trust in human power had already cost him dearly. But his arrogance didn't stop there. After defeating Edom, Amaziah did something shocking. He took the false gods of the Edomites and set them up as his own gods. This king, who had been warned about trusting in Israelite soldiers, now bowed before the gods of his defeated enemy. This time, God sent another prophet, asking the obvious question, "Why do you consult this people's gods, which could not save their own people from your hand?" 2 Chronicles 25:15. But Amaziah's heart had changed. He wasn't the young king who once obeyed a prophet's warning. Now he threatened to kill the man who spoke for God. His pride would be his undoing. His arrogance led to a foolish war against Israel, a war he lost humiliatingly. He was captured, his walls were torn down, and eventually he was assassinated by his own people. What began as a reign of promise ended in disaster, all because Amaziah trusted in his own strength instead of God's. Amaziah's son, Uzziah, took the throne at just 16 years old. If his father had suffered from half-hearted obedience, Uzziah seemed to be the opposite, a king fully devoted to God in his early years. He expanded Judah's borders, built massive fortifications, strengthened the army, and even developed cutting-edge warfare technology. 2 Chronicles 26:15. Under his leadership, Judah prospered like never before. But then it happened. As his fame grew, so did his pride, and that pride would destroy him. One day Uzziah did something no king had ever dared to do. He marched into the temple to burn incense on the altar. This act was strictly forbidden. The law of Moses was clear. Only the priests could enter the holy place. But Uzziah, now powerful and untouchable, thought himself above the law. The high priest, Azariah, and 80 other priests confronted him, pleading with him to stop. "It is not right for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord. That is for the priests. Leave the sanctuary, for you have been unfaithful, and you will not be honored by the Lord God." 2 Chronicles 26:18. But Uzziah was furious. He wasn't used to being told no. He raged against the priests, his pride boiling over. Then suddenly, before he could finish his outburst, leprosy broke out on his forehead. The room fell silent. The mighty king, the man who had built cities, defeated armies, and ruled for decades, was now marked by God himself. In horror, the priests rushed him out of the temple, and Uzziah himself fled, knowing what this meant. His pride had cost him everything. From that moment on, he lived in isolation, forbidden to enter the temple again. The king who had everything died a leper, cut off from his people, his throne, and his God. Amaziah and Uzziah's stories are strikingly similar. Both started well, but ended in disaster. They forgot one crucial truth. Success doesn't make you untouchable. Power doesn't put you above God's commands. How often do we do the same? We start off relying on God, but once we taste victory, we start to think we don't need Him anymore. We push past boundaries we were never meant to cross. Some force their way into leadership before their time. Others make reckless financial decisions, trusting in earthly wisdom rather than God's provision. And some, like Uzziah, think their past faithfulness gives them permission to do whatever they want. But pride always leads to destruction. The question is, are we humble enough to recognize when we're going down that path? If this lesson has spoken to you, share it with someone who needs it. The story of Judah isn't over yet. More kings will rise and more will fall. And the next king, Jotham, will be one of the last bright spots before the nation spirals into judgment. The kingdom of Judah had seen righteous kings and wicked kings, but Ahaz was in a league of his own. Unlike his father, Jotham, who had sought to follow God, Ahaz ran full speed in the opposite direction. He wasn't just a bad king, he was a disaster. His reign wasn't merely one of political failure or military defeat. Ahaz was a spiritual catastrophe. He abandoned the God of his ancestors, desecrated the temple, and led the people of Judah into the darkest idolatry imaginable. And as if idolatry weren't enough, he committed one of the most unspeakable sins recorded in the Bible. He sacrificed his own children to pagan gods. This was not just a story of a king who strayed from God. This was the account of a man who sold his soul, dragging an entire nation down with him. Before Ahaz, Judah had been holding on. Barely. The kings before him, even the ones who faltered, still had some regard for God. The temple still stood as the heart of worship, and the name of Yahweh was still honored. But when Ahaz took the throne at just 20 years old, he tore apart what little faith remained. He did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord. He followed the ways of the kings of Israel and also made cast idols for worshipping the Baals. 2 Chronicles 28, 1 through 2. This was shocking. The kings of Israel, his northern neighbors, had been living in rebellion against God for centuries, embracing Baal worship and every form of corruption. And now Ahaz wanted to bring those same sins into Judah. It didn't take long before the people followed their king's lead. When the ruler of a nation rejects God, the people soon do the same. Idolatry spread like wildfire. And Judah, the kingdom that was supposed to remain faithful to God, became indistinguishable from its pagan neighbors. But Ahaz wasn't finished yet. He was about to do something so evil that it would stain his name for eternity. The Valley of Hinnom, just outside the walls of Jerusalem, was about to become the site of one of the most horrifying acts in Judah's history. Ahaz, desperate for favor from the gods of the nations around him, did the unthinkable. He burned sacrifices in the valley of Ben Hinnom and sacrificed his children in the fire, engaging in the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. 2 Chronicles 28:3. His own children, royal princes, heirs to the throne of David, were thrown into the flames, their screams piercing the night as their bodies burned in honor of Molech, the Canaanite god of death. This was not just rebellion. This was the ultimate defiance. God had warned his people never to follow these practices, calling them an abomination. But Ahaz ignored God's commands and willingly handed his own sons over to the fire. This was the moment Judah crossed a line. The kingdom that once had God's favor was now sacrificing its future to false gods. And God would not stay silent. When a nation turns away from God, there is always a consequence. Ahaz's betrayal of God led to Judah's destruction from every side. The first blow came from Aram, Syria. Their army swept through Judah, capturing prisoners and striking terror into the land. Then came Israel, yes, Judah's own relatives. The northern kingdom, already steeped in its own wickedness, attacked its brother kingdom with a vengeance. In a single day, 120,000 warriors of Judah were slaughtered. Among the dead was Messiah, the king's own son. Yes, Ahaz, the man who sacrificed his sons, had one of his children die by the sword. As if that weren't enough, Israel took 200,000 women and children as captives, dragging them away to Samaria. Judah was left in ruins, its streets filled with blood, its families torn apart. The message was clear. You wanted to worship foreign gods? Now feel the wrath of the nations who serve them. Yet even in judgment, God showed mercy. The prophet Oded came forward and rebuked Israel's army, warning them that God was angry with them for going too far. In a shocking turn of events, Israel released the captives and sent them home with food and clothing. It was a glimpse of mercy, but for Ahaz, it didn't matter. He had already made his decision. Most kings, after seeing their land suffer, would humble themselves. Most would cry out to God for help, but not Ahaz. Instead of repenting, he doubled down. The Bible records one of the most disgraceful acts of his reign. In his time of trouble, King Ahaz became even more unfaithful to the Lord. 2 Chronicles 28:22. He stripped the temple of its treasures and sent them as gifts to the king of Assyria, hoping for protection. But Assyria didn't care about him. They took his gold and left him vulnerable. And in his final act of defiance, Ahaz shut the doors of the Lord's temple. The very place where Judah was supposed to worship God was now sealed off. The nation that had once housed the Ark of the Covenant was now a kingdom without a temple, without worship, without God. Ahaz died in disgrace. And in a final act of poetic justice, when he was buried, he was denied the honor of being laid to rest with the kings of David's line. His own people knew he was a failure. Ahaz's life is a chilling warning, not just for kings, but for anyone in leadership. When those in power reject God, their decisions don't just affect them, they destroy generations. Today, we may not see kings throwing their children into the fire, but how many leaders sacrifice the next generation for their own gain? How many sell out their people for wealth, power, or political alliances? How many close the doors of truth and righteousness, silencing God's voice in their nations? Ahaz thought his gods would save him. Instead, they left him abandoned, broken, and cursed. Let his story be a reminder. Turning away from God never ends in victory. The story of Judah isn't over, but after Ahaz, the kingdom is on the brink. The question now is, can Judah ever recover? The kingdom of Judah had been drowning in darkness. Under King Ahaz, the people had turned their backs on God in the most horrific ways imaginable. The temple lay in ruins, idol worship filled the streets, and the nation had been handed over to its enemies. It seemed as if the line of David was on the brink of destruction, teetering between judgment and obliteration. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, a new king rose to the throne. One who would defy the spiritual rot of his father and lead Judah into one of the greatest revivals it had ever seen. His name was Hezekiah, and he was about to do the impossible. But this wouldn't just be a story of spiritual renewal. Hezekiah would face the greatest military threat of his generation, stand alone against the most powerful empire on earth, and witness a miracle so astonishing that even his enemies would tremble. When Hezekiah became king, Judah was a disaster. His father, Ahaz, had shut the doors of the temple of the Lord, abandoning it like a broken relic of the past. 2 Chronicles 28:24. The sacred vessels had been stolen, the lamps had been extinguished, and the people had forgotten what it even meant to worship Yahweh. But Hezekiah was different. He refused to follow in his father's footsteps. He had seen firsthand what happened when a king rejected God, and he was determined to undo the damage. So in the very first month of his reign, he summoned the Levites and priests, standing before them with urgency burning in his voice. "Listen to me, Levites. Consecrate yourselves now and consecrate the temple of the Lord, the God of your ancestors. Remove all defilement from the sanctuary." 2 Chronicles 29:5. For 16 long years, Judah had been drowning in sin. But Hezekiah wasn't about to waste another second. For days, the priests worked tirelessly, hauling out the idols, cleansing the altar, restoring the sacred vessels. And when the work was done, Hezekiah called all of Judah to rededicate themselves to God. What followed was one of the greatest Passover celebrations in history. The people came in droves, filling the temple courts, lifting their voices in worship like they hadn't in decades. Some were so unprepared, so out of practice in the ways of God, that they didn't even follow the proper purification laws. But Hezekiah prayed for them, and God forgave them. And just like that, a nation that had been lost was brought back to life. But Hezekiah's faithfulness didn't go unnoticed. Word spread of Judah's revival, reaching the ears of a man who had no tolerance for defiance, King Sennacherib of Assyria. At the time, Assyria was the undisputed superpower of the world. They had already obliterated the northern kingdom of Israel, wiping it off the map. And now Sennacherib set his sights on Judah. Marching with a massive army, he laid siege to Jerusalem, surrounding the city with soldiers too numerous to count. Then came the psychological warfare. Sennacherib sent messengers, standing just outside the walls of Jerusalem, shouting for all to hear, "Do not let Hezekiah deceive you. No God has been able to save any nation from the king of Assyria. Do you really think your God will be any different?" 2 Chronicles 32:15. Panic spread like wildfire. The people had seen what Assyria had done to Israel. They had heard the stories of cities burned to the ground, of leaders impaled on stakes, of entire populations enslaved. Sennacherib wasn't just boasting, he was stating facts. No nation had ever survived the full force of Assyria. This was the moment of truth. Would Hezekiah cave to fear? Would he surrender like so many others before him? Instead, he tore his robes, went straight to the temple, and laid it all before God. Then he sent word to the prophet Isaiah, pleading for intercession. Isaiah's response was simple: "Do not be afraid. He will not enter this city or shoot an arrow here. By the way that he came, he will return. He will not enter this city, declares the Lord." 2 Kings 19:32-33. That night, as the people of Jerusalem trembled behind their walls, something unthinkable happened. An angel of the Lord descended into the Assyrian camp, and by morning 185,000 Assyrian soldiers lay dead. Sennacherib awoke to a silent, lifeless army. Stricken with terror, he abandoned the siege and fled back to Nineveh. And Judah, a tiny kingdom that should have been crushed, stood victorious. After such a miraculous deliverance, Hezekiah's faith was at an all-time high. But then, without warning, he fell deathly ill. Isaiah came to him with a grim message. Put your house in order because you are going to die. You will not recover. 2 Kings 21. Most kings would have accepted their fate, but Hezekiah wasn't ready. He turned his face to the wall and wept bitterly. Remember me, Lord, how I have walked before you faithfully and with wholehearted devotion. And before Isaiah had even left the palace, God spoke again. Go back and tell Hezekiah, I have heard your prayer and seen your tears. I will add 15 years to your life. 2 Kings 20, verse 5. Hezekiah was healed, proving yet again that God listens to those who cry out to him. But even Hezekiah wasn't perfect. Word of his miraculous healing spread beyond Judah, even reaching the distant kingdom of Babylon. A delegation arrived, supposedly to congratulate him, but in reality they were spies. And in a moment of prideful foolishness, Hezekiah showed them everything: the treasures of the palace, the armory, the wealth of Judah. Isaiah confronted him, shaking his head in grief. Hear the word of the Lord. The time will surely come when everything in your palace will be carried off to Babylon. Nothing will be left. 2 Kings 20:16-17. Hezekiah's actions had opened the door for Babylon to one day conquer Judah. The revival he sparked delayed judgment, but it didn't prevent it. Hezekiah's life is a testimony to both faith and frailty. He led a spiritual revival, proving that one person's faithfulness can turn an entire nation back to God. He trusted God against impossible odds, showing us that no enemy is greater than the Lord. But his pride and short-sightedness led to decisions that would have long-term consequences. His story challenges us. Are we trusting God in every area of our lives, or are we letting pride and compromise creep in? Judah has seen revival, but the storm clouds of Babylon are approaching. The next king will decide the nation's fate. Judah had seen revival under Hezekiah, but revival is only as strong as the next generation's willingness to embrace it. The kingdom had been miraculously saved from the Assyrians. The temple had been cleansed, and the people had turned back to God. But as history has shown time and time again, righteousness is one generation away from extinction. And then came Manasseh, a king whose reign would be so dark, so twisted, that the very foundations of Judah would begin to crumble. The revival of his father would be undone. The streets of Jerusalem would run red with innocent blood, and Judah would fall into a level of depravity never seen before. Yet in the depths of wickedness, something unthinkable would happen, a moment so shocking, so unprecedented, that it would prove one of the greatest truths of Scripture. No one is beyond God's mercy. But first, Judah had to descend into its darkest days. Hezekiah had been a king of revival, but his son Manasseh was the king of rebellion. When he ascended the throne at just 12 years old, Judah was still basking in the afterglow of his father's faithfulness. The temple stood strong, worship had been restored, and the people knew what it meant to follow God. But Manasseh wanted nothing to do with that. Instead, he set out to undo everything his father had built. He reopened the pagan shrines that Hezekiah had destroyed. He rebuilt the altars of Baal, bringing back the same idolatry that had plagued Israel before its destruction. He erected Asherah poles, inviting sexual immorality into Judah's worship. And worst of all, he did something no king before him had dared to do. He defiled the temple itself. He built altars in the temple of the Lord, of which the Lord had said, "My name will remain in Jerusalem forever." In both courts of the temple of the Lord, he built altars to all the starry hosts. 2 Chronicles 33:4-5. This wasn't just idolatry, this was war against God. The very place where Yahweh's presence had once rested, where sacrifices had been made to atone for sin, had now become a place of demonic worship. And it got worse. Manasseh took his own sons, his own flesh and blood, and burned them alive in the valley of Hinnom, 2 Chronicles 33:6. This valley, which would later become a symbol for hell itself, was turned into a place of ritual murder, where infants were sacrificed to the god Molech. But that wasn't all. Manasseh didn't just worship idols. He embraced witchcraft and divination. He sought omens, consulted mediums, and invited every form of demonic influence into the kingdom. And still, it got worse. Manasseh wasn't content with his own corruption. He wanted Judah to join him. Manasseh led Judah and the people of Jerusalem astray, so that they did more evil than the nations the Lord had destroyed before the Israelites. 2 Chronicles 33:9. The people had once been set apart for God, called to be a light to the nations. Now they were worse than the very nations God had wiped out before them. And God took notice. God had sent prophets to warn Judah, calling them to repentance, but Manasseh ignored them. So God did something drastic. He sent the Assyrian army. They stormed into Judah, crushed any resistance, and captured the king himself. And they didn't just take him prisoner, they humiliated him. They put a hook through his nose, bound him in bronze shackles, and dragged him to Babylon. 2 Chronicles 33:11. The mighty king who had once defied God was now a chained prisoner, paraded like an animal before his captors. He had mocked God, defiled his temple, murdered his people, and now he would suffer the consequences. Surely this was the end. But what happened next shocked heaven and earth. No one expected what came next. Manasseh repented. In his distress, he sought the favor of the Lord his God and humbled himself greatly before the God of his ancestors. 2 Chronicles 33:12. The man who had spent decades defying God, who had turned the temple into a house of demons, who had slaughtered his own sons, fell on his face and cried out for mercy. And here is where God's grace defies human logic. God heard him. And when he prayed to him, the Lord was moved by his entreaty and listened to his plea. So he brought him back to Jerusalem and to his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that the Lord is God. 2 Chronicles 33:13. Think about this. Manasseh had done worse than almost anyone in history, and yet, when he humbled himself, God restored him. If there was ever proof that no one is too far gone for God's mercy, it is this moment. Manasseh returned to Jerusalem a changed man. He tore down the pagan altars, removed the idols, and restored the temple. He commanded Judah to return to the Lord. But some damage couldn't be undone. Though Manasseh repented, the people never fully turned back to God. The sin he had introduced had already taken root, and his son Ammon would prove that the next generation had learned nothing from his father's mistakes. Ammon was only king for 2 years. Unlike his father, he never repented. He continued the evil practices of Manasseh, embracing idols and rejecting the Lord. And then, in an act of poetic justice, his own officials assassinated him in his palace. 2 Chronicles 33:24. The people of Judah then executed the conspirators and placed Ammon's son, Josiah, on the throne. And this time, things would be different. This chapter in Judah's history is a paradox of grace and judgment. Manasseh was the worst king in Judah's history, but he found mercy when he humbled himself. Ammon continued in rebellion, and his life ended in betrayal and blood. What does this teach us? No one is too far gone for God's mercy. If God can forgive Manasseh, he can forgive anyone. Repentance doesn't erase consequences. Though Manasseh repented, Judah never fully recovered from his sins. The next generation is watching. Amon followed his father's sins, but ignored his father's repentance, and it cost him his life. Are we leading lives that point the next generation toward God, or are we setting them up for spiritual failure? If this deep dive into Manasseh and Amon has shown you the power of both sin and grace, share this with someone who needs hope. Because even the worst sinner can be saved, but the choices we make today shape the world we leave behind. And next, we'll see how an 8-year-old king would bring Judah back to God. The throne of Judah had been a revolving door of corruption. King after king had led the nation deeper into sin, pushing it closer to destruction. The streets were filled with idols. The temple had become a mere relic of the past, and God's law had been completely forgotten. It seemed as if nothing could stop Judah's downward spiral. Then came Josiah, a king who would change everything. He was just a boy when he took the throne, but his reign would spark one of the greatest revivals in history. He would purge the land of wickedness, rediscover the forgotten word of God, and restore the nation's worship. But even a righteous king couldn't stop what was coming. Josiah's story would end in tragedy, and Judah's fate would be sealed. Would this final revival be enough to save the nation? Or was Judah already beyond redemption? Josiah was only 8 years old when he became king, 2 Chronicles 34:1. Imagine that, while most children his age were learning how to read and write, he was ruling a kingdom. For years, Judah had been drifting further into idolatry. The temple had been neglected, its treasures pillaged by corrupt kings before him. The very word of God, the book of the law given to Moses, had been lost. The people had no idea what God had commanded, but something was different about Josiah. At just 16 years old, he began seeking God. 2 Chronicles 34 verse 3. No one forced him. He had no righteous father to guide him. His father, Amon, had been assassinated because of his wickedness. Yet something stirred within Josiah's heart. And at age 20, he launched a nationwide purge of idolatry. He traveled through Judah, tearing down every pagan altar, every shrine, every carved image. He smashed them to pieces, crushed them into dust, and even burned the bones of false priests on their own altars. He wasn't just cleaning house, he was making a statement. But the real breakthrough came when Josiah turned his attention to God's temple. He ordered the restoration of the temple, hiring workers to repair what had been broken. And that's when they found it. The book of the law, the very words of God, was buried deep within the ruins of the temple. It had been forgotten for generations, collecting dust while the people lived in spiritual blindness. When it was brought to Josiah and read aloud to him, he tore his robes in anguish. 2 Chronicles 34:19. For the first time in his life, he realized the full weight of Judah's sin. He saw how far they had drifted from God, and he knew judgment was coming. So he sent his officials to the prophetess Huldah, asking if there was any hope left. Her response was chilling. This is what the Lord says, I'm going to bring disaster on this place and its people, because they have forsaken me. 2 Chronicles 34:24-25. But then she gave Josiah a personal message. Because your heart was responsive and you humbled yourself before God, your eyes will not see all the disaster I am going to bring on this place. 2 Chronicles 34:27-28. God had decreed judgment, but because of Josiah's repentance, it would not happen in his lifetime. But Josiah wasn't done yet. Josiah didn't just acknowledge Judah's sin, he acted. He gathered all the elders, all the priests, and all the people, from the least to the greatest, and had the book of the law read publicly. 2 Chronicles 34:30. Then, standing before them, he made a covenant with God, pledging to follow him with all his heart and soul. And the people followed. For the first time in decades, Judah returned to true worship. The idols were gone, the false priests were executed, and the people pledged themselves to God. Then came the greatest Passover celebration in generations, 2 Chronicles 35:18. Josiah restored the sacrifices, re-established the priesthood, and led the people in a feast unlike anything since the days of Samuel. It was a national revival, a complete turning back to God. But was it too late? After decades of faithfulness, Josiah made one fatal mistake. Egypt's powerful Pharaoh Necho was marching toward the Euphrates, preparing to battle the growing Babylonian Empire. He had no interest in Judah, he was merely passing through. But Josiah stood in his way. Pharaoh warned him, "What do you have against me, King of Judah? I'm not attacking you today, but God has told me to hurry, so stop opposing God who is with me, or he will destroy you." 2 Chronicles 35:21. But Josiah didn't listen. He disguised himself and went into battle anyway, and an archer's arrow found its mark. Wounded, he was carried back to Jerusalem, where he died. And with his death, Judah's last hope was extinguished. Josiah's life was marked by faithfulness. But his story ended in unnecessary tragedy. He was a righteous king, a leader who brought his people back to God. But in the end, he fought a battle that wasn't his to fight, and it cost him everything. How many of us do the same? How often do we charge into battles, convinced we're doing the right thing, only to find out God never sent us there? Are we taking on fights that God never asked us to fight? Are we ignoring clear warnings from Him? Are we trusting our own judgment more than we're listening to His voice? Josiah's death was a warning. Even the faithful can make foolish decisions when they act on impulse instead of instruction. Josiah's reign was the last great revival before Judah fell. He gave the nation one final chance to return to God. And while his reforms delayed judgment, they couldn't erase Judah's past sins. The people had gone too far for too long, and their repentance wasn't enough to stop the coming storm. The next kings of Judah would undo everything Josiah had built. Idolatry would return, wickedness would take over, and in just a few short years, Babylon would come. If this breakdown of Josiah's legacy has given you a fresh perspective, share this Deep Bible Stories video with someone who needs encouragement. Revival is possible, but obedience must come with it. Judah is out of time. The next chapter will be its darkest hour. The fall of Jerusalem is coming. The kingdom of Judah had stood for centuries, its foundations laid by David and Solomon, its history marked by great revivals and devastating betrayals. But now, its time had run out. For years, prophets had warned of judgment. They had pleaded, wept, and cried out for the people to return to God. But the warnings went unheeded. Sin had become too ingrained, rebellion too deep, corruption too widespread. Judah's final years were not marked by glorious battles or righteous kings. Instead, they were filled with weak rulers, political chaos, and spiritual decay. And then, from the north, came the shadow of Babylon. This was no mere invasion. This was the reckoning of a nation that had spent 400 years defying God. After Josiah's tragic death, Judah collapsed into a downward spiral. 4 kings would sit on the throne in rapid succession, each one weaker and more wicked than the last. 1. Jehoahaz, the king who never had a chance. Jehoahaz, Josiah's son, was crowned king, but his reign lasted only 3 months. 2 Chronicles 36, 1-2. Why? Because Egypt was still in control. Pharaoh Necho, the same ruler Josiah had foolishly fought, deposed Jehoahaz and took him prisoner to Egypt, where he died in captivity. Judah's independence was gone. The nation was now a pawn in the hands of foreign empires. 2. Jehoiakim, the tyrant who ignored prophets. Pharaoh Necho replaced Jehoahaz with his brother Jehoiakim. 2 Chronicles 36:4. If Judah had any hope that Jehoiakim would restore stability, they were quickly disappointed. Jehoiakim was a cruel and arrogant ruler, known for his oppression of the poor. The prophet Jeremiah confronted him, warning that judgment was coming. But instead of repenting, Jehoiakim burned Jeremiah's scroll, tearing the words of God apart piece by piece, Jeremiah 36:23. For 11 years, he ignored every warning. And then the empire of Babylon arrived. 3. Jehoiachin, the king who surrendered. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, laid siege to Jerusalem. Faced with an enemy Judah could never defeat, Jehoiakim died, and his son Jehoiachin took the throne. 2 Chronicles 36:8-9. His reign lasted even less time than his uncle's, only 3 months. Knowing he couldn't win, Jehoiachin surrendered to Nebuchadnezzar, and the Babylonian king carried him and thousands of Judah's elite into exile. 2 Chronicles 36:10. The best and brightest, the royal family, the skilled craftsmen, the scholars, were all taken to Babylon. Among them was a young man named Daniel, who would soon rise to prominence in the foreign empire. 4. Zedekiah, the puppet king who defied Babylon. In Jehoiachin's place, Nebuchadnezzar installed Zedekiah as a puppet king. 2 Chronicles 36:11. Zedekiah had one job: keep Judah under Babylon's control. But he was arrogant. He made a secret alliance with Egypt, thinking he could break free from Babylon's grasp. It was a fatal mistake. Nebuchadnezzar had been patient, but now his patience ran out. In the year 586 BC, the nightmare began. Babylon's armies surrounded Jerusalem. The city was starved. The people inside, once prosperous, were reduced to eating their own children to survive. Lamentations 4:10. For 2 years they held out, but finally the walls were breached. The soldiers of Babylon poured into the city. They slaughtered men, women, and children alike. Zedekiah tried to flee, but he was captured near Jericho. And his punishment? Nebuchadnezzar forced him to watch as his own sons were executed in front of him. Then, in the last act of cruelty, they gouged out his eyes. So the last thing he ever saw was the death of his children. Then they dragged him in chains to Babylon, where he died a blind prisoner. 2 Chronicles 36:13-14. But the worst was yet to come. The Babylonians turned their fury toward the temple of God, the same temple that Solomon built, the same temple that had once housed the Ark of the Covenant, the same temple where God's presence had dwelled in glory. Now it was set on fire. The gold melted. The wood was reduced to ashes. The priests were slaughtered where they stood. Every stone was torn down. The city was burned, the walls destroyed, the palaces turned to rubble. Jerusalem, the city of David, the city of God's promises, was gone. The survivors were rounded up in chains and dragged to Babylon. The promised land was lost. The people who had been chosen to bless the nations had become slaves once more. But this time, there was no Moses to deliver them. This didn't have to happen. For years, the prophet Jeremiah had begged them to repent. He had warned them, again and again, that this day was coming. But they refused to listen, so God decreed a 70-year exile. The whole country will become a desolate wasteland, and these nations will serve the king of Babylon 70 years. Jeremiah 25:11. The land itself would rest. The Sabbath years Judah had ignored for centuries would now be enforced through exile. 2 Chronicles 36:21. But even in judgment, God had a plan. 70 years later, a new empire would rise. A Persian king named Cyrus would conquer Babylon, and he would send the exiles home. A remnant would return, and from that remnant, God would rebuild his people. The story of Judah's fall is not just history, it's a warning. How many times has God warned us only for us to ignore him? How many times have we chosen compromise over obedience? How many times have we trusted human strength instead of God's power? How many times have we heard his word but refused to change? God is patient, but patience has a limit. Judah thought they could sin without consequence. They believed God's judgment would never come. Until it did. The book of 2 Chronicles ends in devastation, but it is not the end of the story. Judah was exiled. The temple was destroyed. The people were scattered. But God was not finished. A remnant would return. A new temple would be built. And centuries later, a greater king would come. Jesus Christ, the Son of David, the fulfillment of every prophecy, would bring true restoration, not just for Judah, but for the whole world. History is clear. Ignoring God's warnings leads to disaster, but returning to him, that leads to redemption. The kingdom had fallen. The people were gone. The temple was dust and ashes. Judah, the nation once chosen to reflect the glory of God, was no more. For 70 years, the land lay desolate. No more songs of worship in the courts of Zion. No more feasts celebrating God's deliverance. Just the whispers of the wind through empty streets and the ruins of what once was. For those who had been taken into exile, hope seemed like a distant memory. They had sat by the rivers of Babylon, weeping as they remembered Zion, Psalm 137:1. They had hung their harps on the willow trees, too broken-hearted to sing. They were a people without a home, strangers in a land not their own. Had God abandoned them? Had his promises failed? And then, against all odds, hope was reborn. Babylon, the great empire that had reduced Jerusalem to rubble, believed itself to be unstoppable. Its kings, Nebuchadnezzar and his successors, ruled with absolute power. But Babylon had made the same mistake Judah had. They thought they were untouchable. Then, one fateful night, as King Belshazzar feasted in his palace, writing appeared on the wall, a divine message of judgment. Daniel 5:5-31. Before the sun could rise, Babylon fell. A new empire had risen, Persia, under the rule of King Cyrus. And with this shift in power, something happened that no one could have predicted. In 539 BC, just as the prophet Jeremiah had foretold, God moved the heart of Cyrus, a pagan king, to do the unthinkable. The book of 2 Chronicles does not end with exile. It does not end with despair. It ends with a decree, the decree of Cyrus, king of Persia. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem in Judah. Any of his people among you may go up, and may the Lord their God be with them. 2 Chronicles 36:23. This was unprecedented. A foreign king, one who did not worship Israel's God, declared that the exiles were free to return home. More than that, he commanded them to rebuild the temple, the very place that had been destroyed by Babylon. This was not just a political move. It was prophecy fulfilled. Isaiah, writing over 150 years earlier, had specifically named Cyrus as the one who would restore Jerusalem. I say of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and will accomplish all that I please. He will say of Jerusalem, let it be rebuilt, and of the temple, let its foundations be laid. Isaiah 44:28. How could Isaiah have known? Because God had planned redemption from the very beginning. The exile was never meant to be the end of the story. It was a punishment, yes, but it was also a path to restoration. Judah would return. Jerusalem would rise again. And from its people, in the fullness of time, the Messiah would come. The book of 2 Chronicles is a story of failure, of kings who rejected God, of a people who refused to listen, of a nation that fell under the weight of its own sin. But it does not end in failure. It ends with a promise that God was not done, a promise that mercy was still possible, a promise that no matter how far his people had fallen, there was still a way back. And that same promise still stands today. Maybe you've wandered far from God. Maybe you've ignored his warnings. Maybe you feel like your story is over, but it's not, because God is a God of restoration. For Judah, the exile was not the end. And for you, your failures are not the end either. The same God who moved the heart of a pagan king to bring his people home is the same God who can restore you, redeem you, and bring you back to himself. All he asks is that you return to him. The last words of 2 Chronicles point to hope, a hope that ultimately finds its fulfillment in Jesus Christ. Because one day, the Son of David would come, not just to rebuild a temple, but to establish a kingdom that will never be destroyed. The story of Judah is a story of warning, but also a story of redemption. It reminds us that ignoring God leads to disaster. God is patient, but patience has a limit. Even in judgment, God still has a plan. Repentance leads to restoration, and most importantly, no matter how far we fall, God's mercy remains. If this deep dive into 2 Chronicles has challenged you, share this deep Bible stories video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to continue your journey through the most powerful stories in the Bible, check out our ebooks for more in-depth studies. History is clear. Nations rise and fall, but God's promises never fail. And the greatest promise of all, he will always make a way back. History is not just something we read, it's something we repeat. The story of 2 Chronicles is not just ancient history, it is a mirror reflecting the world today. Judah was given everything, a kingdom, a temple, the very presence of God. But they threw it all away for idols, power, and empty promises. They ignored the prophets, silenced the truth, and believed they could live without God. Sound familiar? Look around. Nations rise and fall. Leaders promise peace, but bring corruption. Morality is mocked. Faith is abandoned. Judah thought they were too special to fall until the day Babylon came crashing through their gates. Are we making the same mistake? But even in destruction, God's mercy remained. Judah's rebellion brought exile, but it could not erase God's promises. The story didn't end in ruin. It ended in redemption. And today, no matter how far we've fallen, that same redemption is still possible. The question is, are we listening or are we ignoring the warnings, just like Judah did?